I'm all for all forms of direct action, but it's becoming more clear to me every day that the fastest, most effective way for us to gain the policies we want, for us to gain change, is through a general strike. I simply don't see any other way being as effective as a general strike. Voting, first off, voting, I'm not sure who still thinks voting is the number one priority when we're trying to make change in a country. Voting is not the top priority. I'm not saying don't vote, but voting is a side dish. Voting is not by any means the main course of a movement or the strategies of a movement. The language of the oligarch is money. That's the only thing they understand. Because of this, the only way for people to affect change, real change, is by affecting the pockets of the oligarch, of the ruling class. And the pandemic perfectly illustrates that. Do they care about the deaths, people dying, people getting sick, so they give us health care? No. They care about the stock market. So the stock market got a bailout like that. So then the question becomes, how do we affect the pockets of the oligarch? How do we affect the pockets of the ruling class? We only have one thing they want, and that's our labor. So how do we affect change? How do we do it? There's just one answer, and that's general strike. General strike is the answer to the leftist movement. General strike is the answer to Medicare for all. General strike is the answer for a Green New Deal. General strike is the answer for a living wage. General strike is the answer to get the corporate grips, the corporate hold on our government released. Welcome. I'm your host, Compton J, here for a, Wednesday evening stream. I'm getting it started a little early. Originally, I had a stream scheduled, a healthcare stream scheduled for 6:30, but forgot that I had to pick up my uncle and cousin from the airport. So I went and did that, and now I'm back doing this stream that's going to bleed into two guests later on. So later on in this stream, we're going to have Dr. Kareem Batesh and Dr. Anthony Zankas along with Nick. And we're going to be talking about trauma that stems from the police state. So that's later today. But first, we're going to get to the Jimmy Dore interview that was just dropped not too long ago. Make sure you like this stream. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Just from talking to everybody in my earlier stream today, we had a good amount of people subscribe even since then. So thank you for all your support. And thank you for all your support. And let's see if we can get some more added during this hour. The last thing I'm going to say before we get into this is make sure you subscribe to our Substack so that you get notifications when we have this. This is our way of going around of the YouTube notifications, because we get so many times people saying, I wasn't notified by YouTube's. I wasn't notified about your stream. So this is our workaround around it. So, all right, let's do a chat check. I see John. I see. Oops. Why is it this thing not moving? Okay, there we go. Yeah, I see John. Stop paying your bills. Stop working. Good day. Awesome. All right, so chat looks good. Let's get into this video. Now, this video is I think he literally just dropped this. Let me just see when he dropped this here. So you may have seen a clip of part of this on his, he tweeted out a little 2-3 minute snippet. But this was just released earlier today. Oh, I don't even see a time. Earlier today. Anyway, so let's get to this interview. There is a lot of good points I want to talk about that Chris brings up, and let's get into the first part of it right now.
JFK 8 warehouse in Staten Island voted to unionize with representation by the ALU. He has previously been fired by Amazon for blowing the whistle on unsafe working conditions and poor treatment of workers at the warehouse. Christian, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So I just want to let people know. So there was a big deal. Amazon workers on Staten Island vote to unionize, a landmark win for labor. And I just want to ask you, Christian, what was it like organizing? Because we hear people talk a lot who call themselves Democrats or liberals or lefties or pro-worker. We heard people talk about organizing along class lines. Now, what does that mean to you? And is that what you did?
I'm getting married really soon, and I feel that cool sculpting will help me kickstart preparation.
All right, let's skip and put back the sound.
Yeah, we didn't just talk about it. Jimmy, you've been covering me since I was terminated, and you've seen sort of the transition of how I've continued to persevere and advocate for workers' rights for almost 2 years, over 2 years now. So I didn't just talk about it. I went on the ground and I actually got my hands dirty, and I stayed outside of an Amazon facility.
You know what the Amazon story of unionizing? It's showing the left movement how we should be operating. That's really, to me, one of the great things that comes from this Amazon unionizing is showing people how to organize. The other thing it shows is that people power will always beat money. So the other side can have millions upon hundreds of millions of dollars, but if you have the people, feet on the ground behind you, that money can't beat that. No amount of money can beat people power. So I hope we're not just looking at the Amazon unionizing as just, unions. Look at it as this is what we should be doing as leftists as humans. I'm going to stop saying that. Not just as leftists, because the coalition that's needed is not just leftists. Let's continue with a little more of this interview.
For 11 months. And the workers saw that. Workers saw me out there every single day in, day out, rain or shine, just continuing to advocate and build relationships and earn the trust until, we were able to become successfully the first union in American history.
And so talk about the coalition of workers that you put together and what kind of people make up your coalition.
These are former and current Amazon workers. Most of them are still currently working there. Some are, unfortunately, they were terminated as well, or they no longer work for the company, but they also continue to advocate along with me. Some actually were even directly underneath me when I was a supervisor there. So there's, my vice president, Derek Palmer, who's been around since day one. Jason Anthony, he used to be underneath me day one. Gerald Bryson, who, breaking news, guess what? He just got reinstated as of today.
Oh, fantastic.
10J has been uplifted. I believe a judge just approved that he'll have his job back.
Yeah, that's great. If you didn't hear that news, I actually heard that news also, that an Amazon worker was reinstated, was ordered by a judge to be reinstated. So let me fast forward, because they get more into the organizing part a little bit later in the conversation. So let me fast forward to right about here.
So that your JFK 8, this the fulfillment center you organized is in Staten Island, like you said. So there's going to be a lot of Trumpers who work there. And so they're now in your union, and you caught a lot of flack because uh, you went on Tucker Carlson and to help spread your message. Workers come in all stripes, and you representing a class of people. You're not representing political ideologies. You're representing a class of people. So you went on Tucker Carlson, and you did it. You did a really great job. I think you did a great job. And everybody has their own agenda. Your agenda was to get your message out, and I think you did. And so let me just play. It's very brief. It's only about 2.5 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. So I'm going to play it. And then I just want so people have a context of what we're talking about. So let me just play it.
So were you surprised that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has said repeatedly that she's on the side of the worker against the corporation, wasn't standing with you at the barricades?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just her. It was all of them pretty much. It's not
fair.
I don't want it to make it just between us and AOC because, a lot of them didn't show up. And, once again, we have no ill will against them. We know that whether they showed up or not, they didn't make or break our election. We just had to continue to organize.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird moment because, I'm on the right. I've never been particularly pro-union, but it does seem like Amazon needs some counterbalance. Like it's this huge company. The workers have no power, and maybe we could, I don't know, share a little power with the people who work there.
So I'm glad he went on Tucker Carlson. But come on, Tucker. You're not pro-union. You're against unions. You're simply doing this segment because you want to shit on AOC. That's part of your stick. So that's what this about. But because that's Tucker's motivation, that has nothing to do with Chris. Chris still comes on here because there's millions of people that watch this show, and he can get his message out to millions of people that may never hear this message because they watch Fox News. So he should be doing that every time.
So that's my view anyway. So tell us where you are in your organizing efforts.
Well, right now, we're fighting for a contract. Amazon's disputing the election results. So we're in walking and chewing bubble gum at the same time. We're fighting for a contract. We're preparing for another election in 2 weeks on April 25th. We're going to be voting at a second location directly across the building that we just unionized. So we're in the thick of a fight right now, a legal battle. And, we just have to stay grounded and pretty much begin our campaign all over again.
I mean, you'd think that Amazon would be open to a union, wouldn't you? It's a very progressive company. Why do you think they're trying to thwart you from organizing?
Amazon hasn't been unionized in this country since the beginning of its existence, and they're very anti-union. They created a system that hires and fires people. They created a system that they have full control of the working people, and having a union obviously brings representation for the workers that'll benefit the workers at the bottom, like myself, hourly associates, entry-level workers that don't get the right to negotiate. So forming a union gives us the right to collective bargain with.
Let me pause it there. We're watching the interview. This is a good chunk of the interview. Anybody who's against him, who are saying stuff about him going on Tucker Carlson, are you watching the interview? Like, are you watching to even seeing the substance that's coming from the interview? Are you just going, Tucker Carlson, fuck that shit, because you're about the red-blue game? Like, who could look at this interview and see anything sort of insidious, anything that's wrong with this? You can clearly see Tucker Carlson trying to bait, in the first question especially, trying to bait Chris Smalls, and he doesn't take it, and he continues on giving his message. Someone who would have a problem with that is just bizarre. Unless you're only about the team. Your team, the whole team game is above everything. It's above getting your message out about unionizing. It's above getting your message out about workers. Playing the red-blue game is top priority when you're a liberal. That comes first. Let's listen to some more, and then I'm going to rewind it back to before this. I'm going to jump around, so I'm basically pointing that out.
With the company, form a contract to protect ourselves. So that's exactly what we're trying to do with the Amazon Labor Union. We're hoping that we'll be a catalyst for something that'll take place nationwide.
Well, I certainly am rooting for you. I mean, maybe if they throw some more woke slogans at you, you'll forget you can't feed your family.
Oh my God, that laugh. That laugh. Good Lord. Let me play that again. That laugh is just terrible.
Do with the Amazon Labor Union. We're hoping that we'll be a catalyst for something that'll take place nationwide.
Well, I certainly am rooting for you. I mean, maybe if they throw some more woke slogans at you, you'll forget you can't feed your family.
Right.
Chris, I appreciate your coming on. Thank you very much.
So that was the entire.
What? But Tucker's joke at the end is gross. Glad he went on there, though. Yeah, that's that joke of maybe if they throw some more woke slogans at you, that'll feed your family. Really? So he's concerned about your family being fed, and then the woke slogans. What woke slogan is he talking about? Is he talking about defund the police? You see how they take, like, woke used to be good, but you see how they take and then twist it, make it into water it. They strip it of what it really means, water it down, misuse it, and then it ends up being this. Same thing happened with the term identity politics. Same thing happened with the term progressive. Same thing is happening with healthcare as a human right. The co-opting by the capitalists. We have to figure out a way. But I think we have figured out a way with defund the police. That's the slogan they can't co-opt. That's why they just have to tear it down. Keep trying to tear it down as a way to get rid of it. Because if that sticks, there's no co-opting of defund the police. Let's continue.
Entire interview, and it was fantastic. And I think that, I saw an article that more Democrats watch Tucker Carlson than watch MSNBC. So you're reaching a big, broad. You're not just reaching right wingers or Republicans. You're also reaching Democrats, centrists. And you caught a lot of heat for going on Tucker Carlson. And I just wanted to show two examples, and then you can respond to it. This is from someone from Media Matters. Now, Media Matters normally focuses on clipping videos of right-wing people and showing how horrible they feel they are. And so they thought it was wrong for you to go on. They said Tucker Carlson is a hateful bigot, and he uses his program every night to spread his hateful bigotry. Someone like Smalls appearing on his show only gives Tucker credibility he doesn't deserve.
What does that mean? I've heard this. It gives them credibility. I don't understand that. It's almost like you don't understand what the definition of credibility is. If you're saying this, because any person going on a show to talk about whatever the topic is not an automatic gives the person credibility. What the person is saying gives the person credibility, not the guest he's having on or she is having on. The argument is absurd. Let me read this. A lot of people are missing my points, so I'll be a little clearer. Tucker Carlson is a hateful bigot. That's like saying wet water. The bigot is enough to say hateful. Okay? Bigot is enough. And he uses his program every night to spread his hateful bigotry. Someone like Smalls appearing on his show only gives Tucker credibility. Tucker Carlson is on TV where millions of people watch him. He already has credibility as far as a person on TV. Chris Small's not going on there, does nothing but not spread the word of Amazon unionizing. Don't listen to people who tell you don't go talk to somebody. Never listen to anybody like that who says, hey, don't go talk to them. Just go off what I'm telling you about them. Let's continue.
And then one more. There's a necessary conversation to be had about why so many pro-labor electeds kept their distance from JFK 8 fight. But Tucker Carlson's investment in that debate is only to weaken, divide, and confuse. Don't play his game.
What? There is a necessary conversation to be had about why so many pro-labor electeds kept their distance from the JK8 fight, but Tucker Carlson's investment in that debate is only to weaken, divide, and confuse. So going on there, it like this argument lacks so much logic and sense. So I'm gonna move on. I can't.
So what do you say to that, Chris?
It's just ridiculous. You know, first of all, I stay out of Twitter. You know, I tweet and I go about my business. That's what most people should do. But I guess people who have nothing else better to do than have Twitter fingers all day. But that's not what organizing is. You know,
No.
Organizing not social media and not tweeting. You know, I stand in solidarity with somebody and not doing anything.
That is a great
it doesn't matter
point.
What show I go on. I'm gonna have slack.
I stand in solidarity, and then you don't do anything. Great point, Chris.
We're going on the show with you tonight.
That's right.
It's like people don't understand. It doesn't matter who I talk to. It doesn't matter what show I'm on. Somebody always got something to say, and that's just what I learned in my short 2 years of organizing in the labor movement. I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. So it doesn't matter if I go on your show, doesn't matter if I go on MSNBC, doesn't matter if I go on CNN, Fox. To me, I'm going on Fox, but everybody focuses on the person I'm interviewing with. And that's ridiculous. Forget about what I'm talking about. They're worried about Tucker Carlson.
This is the point that I'm making about all those people who are tweeting at him. Don't play his game. Don't do that. They don't at all listen at all to what is being. Oh, I made this point over. They're not listening at all to what is being said. It's that you went on a show of somebody on the opposite team, and I think that's bad. That's it. Because, like I said, if you listen to the interview and you hear what Chris Small says in the interview, how do you walk away from that by saying he shouldn't have went on there? Unless you're only about team sports. You're not about unionizing. You're not about workers. If you're a person, this is a better way. If you're a person who's saying he should not go on here, you are not about workers. Are there people who are workers that watch Tucker Carlson? Are there people who are workers that voted for Donald Trump? Are you for workers or are you only for blue workers? Pretty simple. Let's continue with Chris and Jimmy.
Give a damn about Tucker Carlson. I never met the man. Never watched his show. I didn't even watch the interview until now. So that just tells you how much I don't care. And the only thing I care about is the workers. And I'm hoping that people understand that. It's like, you know, it's about the message, it's about what I'm talking about. It's not about who I'm interviewing with. And if I have the availability to get on somebody's show that has a big platform, I'm going to do it because it's about reaching the mass, like you mentioned. And that's what
I wish more people. This is why I say there is no such thing as platforming and deplatforming. This is the same topic. There is no such thing. There's only having conversations. That's it.
But
So
people
let,
don't understand.
so let me ask. So let me just. Of course I'm being facetious, but when you're organizing a union at Amazon that has all stripes of colors of people and from all different political persuasions, is it helpful to your organizing effort to call half the people at that place racists and bigots? Is that helpful?
Absolutely. I mean, no. I mean, of
No.
course. Is that, you know, because I done 1,001 interviews with many people, and the one interview everybody's having a Twitter war about is Tucker Carlson. Really, it's like, come on now. If you go back from the beginning of when I got fired, I done been on plenty of people's shows, including yours, and it doesn't matter. You know, people always got something to say. But I don't care about that. I don't care about social media. I'm doing the work on the ground every day. You know, that's what's important. It's the workers that are actually affected.
And that's my philosophy. People are going to have something to say and you can't listen to them. You don't know how many times I've said this in an RBN meeting. Oh, they said this. Okay. That has no relevance to me. I don't listen to the naysayers. Like if I plan like the Medicare for All march, I'm only hearing the people who are for it. The tweets and people, I don't hear that. I don't got time for that.
Affected by how we're organizing and what we're doing. So as long as they are okay with it, I'm okay with doing what I need to do.
Okay. What's funny is that you didn't. You kept your eye on the ball about what's happening, getting your message out about workers, and not making it about personalities, which was very smart of you and very deft of you to do that. And the irony is, the people who were criticizing you were doing that. They were actually, quote unquote, taking the bait and making it about personalities
Right.
instead of about the issues.
Exactly.
And so that's why
That's a
those
good
people
point.
have never done anything in their life that even comes close to what you've already accomplished, which is the biggest momentous thing that happened for union organizing in a generation at least. So you're out there getting it done, and people are, of course, telling you where you could do it better. People who've never done anything. And what you've tweeted out was, you're focused on me, I'm focused on we. And that was the perfect comeback. Now,
That was.
I just have a few questions for you. In the New York Times article about your victory, they say the near-term question facing the labor movement and other progressive groups is the extent to which they will help the upstart Amazon labor union withstand potential challenges to the results and negotiate a first contract, such as by providing resources and legal talent. Now, is any of that happening? Has the other labor organizations stepped up to help?
Commercial. All right.
Yeah, of course. You know, now that we won, you know, everybody and the mother is reached out. Cool. You know, this is what we want. We wanted to shake the labor movement up, shake up the, politicians as well to get their support. And it's never too late to get involved. And that goes for everybody who didn't show up in the beginning. But we just have to make sure that they have the workers' interests. And that's my job as the interim president, is to make sure that whoever wants to get involved, they absolutely can. But they can't just get involved for a week or two. They got to make sure they're here for the long haul, especially the New York progressives and the New York elected officials, the unions.
He's going to get to this, I think, or maybe I have to rewind it, but Staten Island, that's Trump country. I'm pretty sure. Actually, let me Google it. Staten Island election results. Let's see. Let's see who. No, I know you can't see this. If I find the right information, I am going to share. I just want to make sure I got. How am I? Okay. All right. This is not it. Anyway, I'm wasting too much time. Maybe I'll be able to get the answer from the comments. So let me see. SI is Trump country. Oh, there we go. Yes. Staten Island. I'm so used to Sports Illustrated being Staten Island is Trump country and NYC cop country. So, according to some leftists, some liberals, this shouldn't have happened. This is Trump country, and you have Chris Smalls, a black guy, trying to unionize Trump country? But according to liberals and some reformist leftists, we're not supposed to reach out to those people. We're not supposed to talk to Trump people. How many of those people who voted for that union are Trump people? Thank you for confirming that. And let's see if they get into that point that I'm making now, or if I have to rewind it.
Established unions. If you're going to get involved with Amazon workers or the AOU in any capacity, we want to make sure that you are here for these workers on the day-to-day. And you're putting something on paper, better laws, better bills that are going to help us organize and help the workers have get protections.
So I remember not too long ago, I was on Twitter and I saw someone tweet out, they said something like, hey, what are we supposed to do when Trumpers want to join our union? And someone responded, you declare victory. That's what you do. You declare victory. So that's when you have the power, when you have people from all sides of the political spectrum coming together. They can dismiss you if it's just a bunch of progressives or a bunch of libertarians or a bunch of Greens or a bunch of social. If there's just a group, a small group, the bigger the group, the less they can dismiss you. And I think that's a great lesson to take. I have one more video I'd like to show you. This is Jim Cramer on CNBC, and this was his assessment of the problems at Amazon, or the problem of the union at Amazon. And I'd just like to get your response.
Well, we know that the union work rules are what everything is about. It's the same case with Starbucks, too. If you can't tell your employees when they work,
so I'm going to pause
really
the video and I'm
going
going to replay. I'm going to start it from the beginning.
Move product.
But if you have a chance to watch this, it is a discussion where it feels like they have more words to say, but they know cameras around and they can't really speak the way the ruling class speaks. That's what it feels this conversation was like. And I'm going to rewind it just a little bit here. I think that's enough.
The same case with Starbucks, too.
Okay. That's enough. Here we go.
Problem of the union at Amazon. And I'd just like to get your response.
Well, we know that the union work rules are what everything is about. It's the same case with Starbucks, too. If you can't tell your employees when they work, then you're really not able to have much of an ability to be able to move product or move coffee. And I think that the unions will be in charge of time that you need to work. And that would be dreadful very dreadful for Andy Jassy.
Dreadful that you can't force somebody to work at 2 a.m. in the morning at a convenience store. That's dreadful. Listen to the sort of like terminology they use, capitalists use, and when they choose to use it. You're talking about labor getting rights over how they work, and you're using language like dreadful. That's telling you how capitalists think of you. Let's listen a little bit more to this interview with Cramer.
So
he stops it there.
We were able to hear that he's saying this is all about unions controlling the time clock and when people are going to work and when they're not. And if the company cannot control when workers work, that's dreadful for them. What do you say to that?
Oh, commercial.
If people are the lifeblood of your organization,
funny as hell. So he's saying basically they're going to lose a bunch of money. That's what they're complaining about, is losing a bunch of billions and millions of dollars that they don't really need anyway. I don't care. Yeah, we're going to control people's, working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Yes, we want them to have a family and family time. So if he's mad about that, oh, well, I don't give a damn. Because, yes, we do work 40 to 60 hours a week, and we work
You understand? I have to keep making this point. American capitalism, the template, what it's reaching for, the gold standard, is slavery. That is what they're always reaching for, to pay the least. And what's the least you can pay? Slave got zero. They're always reaching back to pay less, because the template of the best capital, the most successful capitalism to them, where there's no labor costs, which is the best capitalist system to them, they're always trying to reach for that. They want you to work 50, 60 hours. And it's so funny. I picked up my uncle, and turns out he's revolutionary like me. Get in the car and we're vibing. Right? So the point, let me bring it back. So shoot, I forget. He's telling, so I'm speaking to my uncle, and it's so cool because a lot of the things that he's saying, I can tell as he's hearing me talk, like I'm talking here, I can tell his interest is peaking, because now I know, but he's hearing shit that he's agreeing with. Like, oh, I didn't know my nephew was down with the shit like this. Let me rewind this part right here. Hang on a second.
Yeah, we're going to control people's working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Yes.
So this, now I jog my memory. So my uncle is telling me the stories of my family. He's telling me about how his dad, my grandfather, was a sharecropper. That's the same thing as a slave, by the way. And he says this too. Because I was like sharecropping, and I was just about to say, that's basically slavery. And he said it himself. So we're vibing, and he was like, no, that's slavery. It's the same thing. It's just a different name. But sharecropping is the same thing. He would tell me the stories about how you would sharecrop, and at the end of the year, hey, you owe me this, the slave, and then it was always a reason they couldn't pay you, where you owed them money. You sharecropped the whole year, and you owed them money. It's how Black people were treated who were sharecropping. And my great-grandfather was a slave. So his grandfather, this is my uncle I'm talking, his grandfather was a slave. And he talks about how my grandmother is her family is from Oregon, or they think my grandfather's family is from Oklahoma, but they really don't even have a clue. He was telling me how you could wake up, you could go out in the fields, come back from a day's work, and your wife is sold off, and you going in the fields not knowing you never gonna see your wife again. So anyway, that was a great discussion. I'm trying to get him so where I can interview him to have this conversation on a stream so you can hear how it goes and the things that he's talking about. But like, it was great to hear my uncle is like on that same wave, like revolutionary wavelength. So it was great to hear that. But let me throw up some comments here. Identity politics and wokeism is bastardized on both sides. Absolutely. They hate that terminology, can't co-op it. They're referring to defund the police there in that one. Tucker laughs like Like all good socialists do. Yeah, he does have a. It's very similar to the person. What's his name over Facebook? Very similar to that kind of laugh. Very like scary. Like kind of laugh to me. Liberals and the progressive left are all obsessed about keeping their echo chambers hermetically sealed. That is what it is. They don't want you going on Tucker and bursting that seal or breaking that seal. Great point. Let's go to the next one. I can pretty much guarantee a hell of a lot of Amazon workers throughout the South saw that show and now have someone to reach out to. And that's what they don't want. They don't want a rural American to see Chris Tucker talking about unionizing, and for that worker, for that rural person to go, wow, that guy from the urban city is thinking the same shit I'm thinking. That's what they don't want. That's why liberals, the establishment, don't want us going on Fox News. They don't want you giving that information out so that you can possibly team up in coalition with people who watch Fox News. I think that's the actually, let me go to some other comments, some new comments I just got in here. Yes. Yeah, my uncle, boy, that conversation really like up my spirits, because I was just like, wow, he really, like, he gets like all of that shit. He gets it. The police thing, you should have heard what he was saying about the police. He was like, the police, he's like, you can't start out as an organization of slave catching and then think you're gonna be something different. When I heard that, I was like, what the fuck? So knowledge is out there. The shit is out there. He was like, that's never gonna be fixed. He was like, the police state is never, he's like, this is who they are. This is their job. It's to kill people like they killed George Floyd. That's their job to do that. They're only doing their job. This other stuff they're trying to convince us, getting people out of, getting kittens out of trees, walking people across the street. That's the made up part of it. The killing shit is their job. So when I'm hearing this from my uncle, like, I'm just like, shit, this shit is, it's in my blood. Yes. What did I say? Chris Tucker. If I said Chris Tucker, that's not what I meant. I meant Tucker Carlson, if I said that. Yes, I'm mixing it up. That's funny. That's real funny. But let's continue with, this is almost done. So let's listen to the rest of this here.
We want them to have a family and family time. So if he's mad about that, oh, well, I don't give a damn. Because, yes, we do work 40 to 60 hours a week, and we work 10 to 12 hours a day with a 30-minute lunch. And I don't think they relate to what our lifestyles are. So if we want better, and that's exactly what the union is going to do, I'm all for it. I can care.
Let me just tell you, a 30-minute lunch is no lunch. You ever been on lunch, and you know how everybody has to go to lunch at the same time? You ever been on lunch, and you go to the place, and it's a long fucking line, and you got 30 minutes, basically, to get your food and get back to your desk to not eat your food. 30-minute fucking lunches. I used to have those. Bullshit. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's get back to the video. Let's finish playing the video here.
Care less about what some rich, people are discussing.
Okay, so your next election is on the 25th of April. And what is that?
Yep.
What is that about?
This is our second election in Staten Island. It's LDJ5. It's a sortation center right across the street from JFK. It's about 1,600 workers. We are in the heat of that. We got organizers out there daily, just organizing inside and outside, and we're hoping to be successful. This will also be a historical moment for the movement and for the ALU. Well,
Chris, I just can't tell you, how much it means to everybody, what you're doing. and you're setting an example. You're not tweeting, you're not Facebooking, you're actually getting your boots on the ground and organizing people and getting it done. You're doing it much better than the politicians. You're embarrassing the politicians like you should be. And it's not that hard, and but you're doing it. So I just want to say thanks. And, please keep us abreast of whatever you're doing, and anything you need amplification on, just let us know and we'd be glad.
Oh, that's great. So let me go back, because there was another part here, because I skipped forward, that I wanted to kind of touch
even
on.
Though individually I may do so from time to time, endorse certain folks, the union itself.
After this part here.
Experiencing the same kind of oppression from the same oligarchy.
Okay, this is the part when they're talking about coalition building. I think it's this part right here. I think it's it.
And we can't, pick and choose who we want to organize with. We want to include everybody.
So what you're saying is, if you're an Amazon worker.
So let me rewind more, because Jimmy is piggybacking on what Chris just said when he's asking him about the team coalition building. So let me rewind a little bit so you can hear what Chris says here.
The union itself, ALU, doesn't endorse politicians. We don't pick sides. We don't care whether you left, right, up, down, middle, red, green, blue, yellow. It doesn't matter. We want to represent all workers. At the end of the day, everybody's a worker. It's not about political views, and we can't, pick and choose who we want to organize with. We want to include everybody.
So what you're saying is, if you're an Amazon worker, it doesn't matter if you're a communist, a socialist, a Democrat, a libertarian, a gun nut, or a Trumper. You all are experiencing the same kind of oppression from the same oligarchy, and so you all have common needs, and you come around. You can coalesce along common ideas. That's what you're saying.
That's what solidarity is. People scream solidarity but don't know what it is. They pick and choose when they want to use it. If you're talking about solidarity, you gotta find a commonality. You gotta build up the commonality, and the commonality for Amazon workers is the working conditions, the environment.
Yeah, I'm convinced that a good chunk of people on the left not just the left, but I'm talking about the left. That's why I'm going to say that, have no idea what solidarity means. It's like they create an idea of what solidarity means. Solidarity is just, I'm with everybody who agrees with me, as being solidarity. Solidarity is like, there's one issue we agree on, or two. That's really what solidarity, because if you're agreeing with everything, the person, it's not really solidarity. You're agreeing with everything. So if their issue is healthcare for all, we have solidarity around that. We're not talking about any other extenuating topics. But it's like, we believe on the left, or some of us believe on the left, that solidarity means we have a screening process to screen all the people we don't like before we say, now we're going to have solidarity with the people that are left. It is just, it's absurd.
Environment, the culture. And what we do with ALU is we created a culture that resonates with the mass and the majority. And that's how you form a union. And that's what a union should represent. You're talking about unity. You talk about bringing people together. Once again, we build off the commonality of what the issues are. So we don't fall into the rabbit hole of, because you're left or right, we don't want to organize with you.
So, so that your JFK 8, this the fulfillment center you organized is in Staten Island, like you said. So there's going to be a lot of Trumpers who work there. And so they're now in your union. And you caught a lot of flack because you went on Tucker Carlson.
So now he's gotten to this point.
And just help spread your message. Workers come in all stripes. And you representing a class of people. You're not representing political ideologies. You're representing a class of people. So you went on Tucker Carlson, and you did it. You did a really great job. I think you did.
So let's talk about this let's talk about this some more. So if you're talking about worker solidarity, if we're talking about the proletariat and Marxism, and we're talking about worker solidarity, what connects us together is that we're workers and nothing else. Nothing else. We're workers, so let's go get our rights as workers. And I look at, you have to look at it. Maybe let me say it in this way. So we have slave owner. Then we move into, then we have feudalism when we have the serfs, right? Just keep progressing, just in that sort of thinking. And slaves coming together, regardless of whatever other ideas they have, the solidarity around slavery would be to end slavery, regardless of the other items that surround that, other items that we may disagree on. I'm really trying to think of a way for more leftists to understand or to get out of this person disagrees with me on this issue, that means I'm done. Like, and I don't know which issues you're fine with compromising, but that is a discussion on the left that we need. It's a long-awaited discussion that we haven't had, that we need to talk about. Who are we supposed to be coalitioning with? Now, if you're just going off Marxist, it's any worker. There's no other criteria. Literally. So as leftists, you know how we say, oh, I'm not coalitioning with Boogaloo Boys, I'm not coalitioning with whoever, I'm not coalitioning with Trump supporters. Would be like slaves saying, yeah, I want to abolish slavery, but I'm not teaming up with that slave that, I don't even know, that slave that doesn't want to cut the military budget. The slave that's pro-life. The slave that's against gay rights. The slave that's against interracial marriages. Like, none of that comes into play. And I don't know if the left is ready to do that. It doesn't feel like the left is ready to really coalition build. It doesn't feel that way to me. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. All right, so let me go to the next video. I guess I can just keep this up and just go from here. I'm going to do another short video before our guests come on. I'm going to be joined by Nick, Dr. Zunkis, and Dr. Karim Batesh shortly, in about 20 minutes or so. But there was another, I think it's this one. I don't remember the title of it, but it had to do with corporate media. I think this is it. Yeah. This is a real quick story to do before we get on here. Hang on a second.
What's going on over at MSNBC? They're afraid of freedom of speech. Elon Musk has threatened to bring freedom of speech back to Twitter. What does that mean? It scares people who voted for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. Why does it scare them? Because they're going to let Donald Trump back on Twitter, and they can't have a former president having a voice in American politics. That's the kind of fascist authoritarians that people who voted for Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton have become. They are authoritarian fascists who are against free speech. They're against what makes America great. They'd feel more comfortable in places like North Korea, Saudi Arabia, and the former Soviet Union, ironically. So I'm about free speech and against censorship, and they're all for it. And you want to hear what they have to say? Here we go.
There are real and devastating consequences for using that platform to lie.
There are real and devastating consequences for using that platform, meaning Twitter.
I don't understand. How can people watch this? MSNBC is just unfiltered garbage. Just terrible. Like, literally, I could literally watch, like, Fox News is garbage too, but I can stomach Fox News. I can't stomach MSNBC for like more than just a few minutes. It's just vile garbage that they spew over there. Let's listen. So the caption here says Elon Musk offers to buy Twitter for $43 billion.
To lie. What about MSNBC when you use MSNBC to lie? Like the way you lied about Bernie Sanders. And when you said that he was being propped up by the Russians. What were the consequences of that? Oh, yeah, that's right. We got a warmongering right-wing tool of the military-industrial complex in Wall Street as our president. So that was the consequence of
their rating.
That's what she means. That's right.
There are real and devastating consequences for using that platform to lie.
There's not. There's not real or devastating consequences on Twitter if you're lying on. There's not.
And we've seen it. We've seen it happen. I wonder, when talking about this, it's kind of funny. Oh, Elon Musk wants to buy it, but there are massive life and globe altering consequences for.
Yeah, like
for what?
Massive.
Are you talking about? What the fuck are you even talking about? This is, I think her name is Katie Tur. And believe it or not, I used to watch her and all the other NBC clowns, goons over there thinking that I was being informed. That's what I used to think. Just can't imagine that I used to be there. But let's listen some more.
It's going to massively alter the globe. If people have freedom of speech, if people can communicate freely on a social media platform, unlike the massive global ramifications of having billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg own Facebook and Instagram. I guess is there a global? That's okay. How about having Jeff Bezos, the second richest guy in the world, own the Washington Post and have contracts with the CIA? That's okay to her. That's super. And it's okay for her to work for the military industrial complex and Wall Street, which funds her paycheck. So that's okay. We just can't have free speech. That's bad. And they all want to make free speech seem tainted and dirty because they try to stick it to Elon Musk because people don't like Elon Musk because he's the world's richest man. And we naturally don't like the world's richest man. And so that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to sully the idea of freedom of speech, which is what this country is built on. They're trying to make that dirty now by associating it with Elon Musk. It's got nothing to do with Elon Musk. These people are paid by authoritarians and the elite to manage the narrative. And that's why they're for censorship. That's all they have left is censorship. Okay.
Well, also, the Saudi Arabia, what's the guy's name? MBS, the guy from Saudi Arabia.
I'm going to fast forward. I think she says more. Let me see if I catch her saying.
And I was like, why is he weighing?
I want to hear.
He was against.
I want to hear more of
Elon.
The nonsense.
Here we go.
People run wild on the thing.
Yes, 100%. But that's Facebook.
Oh, wait, we missed what she said there right at the end.
Musk wants to buy it, but there are massive life and globe altering consequences for just letting people run wild on the thing.
You can't let people run. So free speech is the equivalent to a corporate news host, the equivalent of people running wild. You can't let people run wild.
You can't let people run wild and freely speak. That's essentially what Katie Kerr is saying here. Or Katie Tur with a T. This shit is laughable. Who is still watching MSNBC? don't get it. Let me answer this question really quickly because I saw it. Will you be doing any future shows on foreign policy if Lulu wins in Brazil? I don't know if I'm gonna be doing it, but it'll be done on the channel. We have the International Leftist Coalition, and then we also have Josana, who's Brazilian. So I'm like, she just did another show, I think it was last night, where she brought in some Brazilian activists, Brazilian translator. So it will absolutely be covered on the channel. I don't know if I'm going to be the one covering it, but it will be covered on the channel. I no longer watch MSNBC. Sometimes I have to watch it for the work that I do, for this work that I do. And that's the one I can't stomach. MSNBC was owned by General Electric. GE made jet engines for military industrial complex. You like that one? You see how it all connects back? Has any news organization, what news organization, name one, who has been against a war? Show me footage of CNN saying, President, what the fuck are you doing? You shouldn't be going to war. A news organization, point to one. They're all owned by the oligarch, the ruling class. How is it that no news organization is against any of the wars that has been created, manufactured by the United States? Not one? Come on, man. Let's continue. Hey, CJ and Ashura, I cannot stomach NBC or Fox, but Fox makes me laugh sometimes because it reminds me of a The reason I think I can stomach Fox is because it's almost like SNL. It's like no one is taking it seriously, right? I mean, that's how I feel, maybe because I just don't know people who take it seriously, but I know people who take MSNBC and CNN seriously. So let's see. Let's check the next. Yeah, happy 420 to everybody. Absolutely. Okay, so let's continue. Let me see here. There is more that's said, and I'm going to fast forward to that part here.
Freedom of speech is not a value of Americans. Obviously, censorship is what a good Christian would do.
Yes, 100%. But that's Facebook is real.
She says yes, 100%. So where do they find people like this? Where do they find people just as dumb as they are on purpose? And they consider themselves in journalism and they're pro-censorship by the elite. So it just goes to show you why this country's in the shit show it is. Because people like this, who are the elite of journalism, who get millions of dollars a year to do journalism, are just that, tools of the elite. And they're not saying anything worthwhile here whatsoever, except shut up, plebes, and take your censorship. Exactly. Here we go.
Where the real action is in that. So this is a very small company. It has an outsized influence because media people like it, politicians, world leaders, and Elon Musk. And so
she's employed by Vox.
I was just about to say, she works for Vox. Why are we listening to her?
Oh my God.
And she's against someone else having freedom of speech. Of course, she's in.
It's called Vox. I mean, it's
Jesus.
Is if he's not going to do this, and by the way, Twitter and some of its biggest investors, like Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, are saying no, and they're putting poison pills in. What is he going to do? He's going to have to somehow unload this 10% stake. And that's probably what he's going to have to do, or raise private financing, which has its own risks and possible rewards, but a lot of risks for him.
Well, I didn't play the soundbite, but he was asked if there's a plan B, and he laughed and said there is. We'll find out what that is.
That's what a super villain hero would say, right? He thinks he's Tony Stark, right? That's what they'd say. Whatever.
Right? Who signs your paycheck? Who's the super?
Like MSNBC is nothing but like puke central. If you want to upchuck, just turn on MSNBC. Give it 5 minutes. Make sure you have a bucket somewhere close. It's literally terrible. But anyway, let me see if there's any last comments that she says here. And it does. Let's see.
News or the truth. They're there to gaslight you and manufacture consent, which is what they're doing. Here is, don't oppose Elon running Twitter, at least compared to the status quo, but I do disagree with the more generalized enthusiasm for wealthy people and organizations hostile takeovering of social media firms. That could easily go very wrong. Imagine an ethically challenged foreign government doing it.
Saudi Arabia?
They already do.
What?
Saudi Arabia already does with Twitter right now.
They just said they did that.
That's right.
Let me up close and read this here. What this person is saying. Oops. There. Okay, so a short list of media properties run by billionaires today. New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, Boston. Look at this. So billionaires own these are the places telling us information. New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, Boston Globe, New York Daily News, Bloomberg, NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, Times, Fortune, Politico, The Atlantic, Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, Daily Beast, The Intercept. So billionaires are giving out information. Are billionaires giving out accurate information or information that keeps them billionaires?
A short list of media. So this guy retweets her and he says, here's a short list of media properties owned and run by billionaires.
And let me go back to her original tweet.
He does with Twitter right now.
Don't oppose Elon running Twitter, at least compared to status quo, but I do disagree with the more general enthusiasm for wealthy people orgs and hostile takeover social media firms. Yeah, that was a bad point. So I think I'm going to close it here and get ready for the next segment here. Now, before the next segment comes, or before we go into our next segment, I do want to make sure everybody joins or follows, subscribes to our Substack. This is where you're going to be able to get all the information about our upcoming episodes. Or not upcoming episodes, like when an episode is about to come out or a stream, you'll be notified if you're on our mailing list. All right, so one thing I'm going to bring up here in just a second here. Where am I? All right, so not likes. I have a short clip.
What's going on, CJ? Hope you don't mind if I jump in a little early.
Hey,
I'll be joining CJ tonight. We love doing these panels. It's been a while since we did the Kareem, Zinkis, CJ, Nick panel. So I'm actually excited tonight. That's what we about to get into here very soon. I guess now I want to make this announcement since we do announcements.
Yeah, go ahead.
Make sure you guys subscribe to us on Substack. Our Anti-Imperialist Summit is next weekend. You guys saw CJ break down some Jimmy Dore videos. He will join us on the Anti-Imperialist Summit 4 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. We'd have Dr. Gerald Horn as well. Dr. Gerald Horn is someone I was trying to get on this show for a long time. So that and our panel with Jimmy, we're gonna talk about how media manufactures consent for war. So it should be a good show. You guys saw how he was like ripping the media there, and that's what our job as independent media. Cause it's so absurd. And so I was watching the segment he was doing while I was getting ready here, and I've been watching way more corporate media than usual, just so I can see what their narrative is on the whole like Ukraine Russia thing. It's literally the most insane propaganda I've ever seen. And I'm gonna give you guys just a quick example. I saw this segment. This was released. I really wish I was fine. I need to start saving these clips, man. I wanted to do a segment on it. I may dig back and find it, but it was a segment on MSNBC where it was like, yeah, Russia is like this hell state that abandons people to like Putin don't care about his people. Putin just want to take over and conquest and launch wars while the Russian people starve. And it was like 100% projection because we have 800 military bases. Russia has healthcare. They got paid family maternity leave. Me and Zoya went on our show and we listed all the labor benefits that they get in Russia that we do not get here. But anyway, my point is like propaganda been insane. But go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I'm just throwing some stuff up there, and I threw up you mentioned the anti-imperialist summit, so that's the graphic for it. We also got Margaret Kimberly on that Friday. We got Jill Stein on that Friday, and then we got some international academics like that's going to start it off on that Friday. So this summit is a big deal. And you know what I was thinking, Nick? We keep talking about building coalition and building a movement. We're doing that, and we just don't know. These summits are doing that. These summits that we're doing is building that. Go ahead.
My only thing is I tell people everyone has a role in this movement, right? What revolutionary undiscipline gets you is people on the left like competing with each other. What do you do? How dare you criticize this person? What have you done? It's not about competition. It's about you doing the best you can. And considering the position we are in, we are building like this community that won't accept like capitalist duopoly bullshit. So like there's like a lot of pressure on content creators, not even when we don't call people out, right? Because now there's this massive pressure to get shit right. Because we got this community that won't tolerate it. Like our community won't tolerate someone going out there and like, yeah, I think Nina Turner is gonna be great, right? So it's just like that's the community we foster in. Like, I see people reach out to me all the time, and this is probably the thing that made me proud about the work, right? And when they were like, man, I used to follow electoral politics all the time. I focus mostly now on mutual aid because of y'all show, and that's the only thing we can really do, right? With the amount of power that we have, we don't have a ton, but we got enough to build community and educate people. Right. There's I saw a comment. Damn, I just missed it. Fuck. I hate when that happens. I'll scroll down. It says the dude said Nick taking one for the team. Dude, I'm gonna see if I can find the segment I was watching earlier, man. Where they was paying Putin as like, and it's super interesting to watch because in order for you to pull this off, you have to like ignore everything else that is going on in the world. Like, so I'll be watching these segments where they like paying Putin as like the new Hitler. And if you guys are curious, look at like the most recent videos that like MSNBC or CNN posted on their YouTube. And I'm telling you guys, I've only been doing it just kind of want to see how they've been covering it. And it was like the most insane Orwellian propaganda you will ever see. Like it's like the kind of propaganda like you expect out of like World War II. Like if you like looking at history, like, yo, you see how crazy propaganda used to be? Like there was one segment where they was implying that Putin's plan is to take over Europe. Like they're not talking about his demands. They're not talking about, there's no mention of the neo-Nazi Azov battalion that they are wiping out. That, I don't know, maybe I'll get into a lot of stuff that me and Zoe probably cover tomorrow. But do you guys remember the Nazi that was he was speaking at what country was that? We literally just covered this on our show. Zelensky brought like the Azov battalion people. I don't want to mistake the fucking country name. Maybe I should look it up here real quick. Here, let me see. But this guy, he died. Like people was pissed. I'm trying to find. Let me find the receipt. It won't take too long. I just gotta search my my notes here. The point is, like, bro, the Azov is getting fucked up, and there's like no mention of that at all. Let's see if I can find a.
You mean like they're losing? You mean?
I'm gonna show you guys the dude that died. Oh, here he is. So this dude just died. Yeah, they getting fucking wiped out, bro. They getting wiped out. So I covered this story. Well, it was Greek Parliament. I knew, like, I don't know why I was fucking forgetting. But yeah, he went to Greek Parliament, and they always try and downplay like the amount of influence the Azov Battalion and Nazis have, right? But why will you bring like Azov members to speak at Greek Parliament? Why are they so close to Zelensky that they are literally his security? There have been pictures of like people getting weapons and always Azov people. So they always say, oh, Azov people, they're Nazis, is not that big of a deal, but somehow they always been featured. So this guy, you see the guy at the bottom left? This guy with a fucking unibrow damn near?
Mm-hmm.
He gave a speech at the Greek Parliament talking about how, I'll fight for Azov. And then Greek leftist progressives was pissed. Like there was people that even supported like the Ukraine shit, right? They want to send more money and weapons to Zelensky. But even they was pissed off. They're like, bro, why you guys saying a Nazi to speak at our parliament? This guy died. The dude at the bottom left, rest in peace, bozo. The dude at the bottom, he literally just died. That just came out today. So, wow. And then I watched a segment where it was like denazification. What does that even mean? That was one of the segments. It was like, Putin's just making this up. There's no Nazis in Ukraine. And then there's literally a dude that spoke at the Greek Parliament who was an open Nazi. And I pulled a quote that he was saying, like, I fought with the Azov Battalion and all this stuff. But anyway,
are they not talking about this on corporate media? Or are they pretending to act like this?
Bro,
there's no Nazis there.
Corporate media is pretending that Russia is losing. It's literally the craziest shit. Like Russia is really clear. If you follow non-biased news in their operation, they're trying to pretty much denazify the region. They've been slow rolling the military because they really want to do the United States style, where they just continue where their plan is to target and kill as many civilians as possible, so they can get people to negotiate with them. They could have steamrolled and had mass massacred Ukrainians already. They've been doing a slow rolling operation, and it's been successful. But if you look at corporate media, they're pretending, Putin made a miscalculation. The Russian military is not strong as we thought they was. Like, bro, if they wanted to, they could obliterate Ukraine off the map just like that. But the reason why they don't is because, and this is what, if you look at Putin and the Russians, this is clear based on what they've been saying. Ukraine is like 1/3 ethnic Russian. There's been and this is all the history that they don't talk about. Like, there's a close connection. This Zoya will bring it up all the time because she grew up in the USSR and Ukraine. Like, there are people in Ukraine that will go to Russia all the time. People in Russia that will go to Ukraine all the time. It's a close cultural tie. So why would Russia go in there and purposely try to aim for civilians knowing they could kill their own ethnic Russians? It doesn't make sense. If you compare our foreign policy to theirs, yes, in all hot war, there are going to be casualties. But compared to our strategy where we purposely aim for civilians, that is not what they have been doing. Every single massacre, and we got the Bucha massacre that we debunked on the show, and they pulled it off fucking YouTube. If you look at our Rumble channel, we debunked that, and it's clear as day. When you look at the evidence, including the Bucha massacre, Bucha mayor literally saying that they didn't do it. Corporate media never shared that. They never talk about how long it takes for bodies to decompose. They got fucking fresh bodies that been there for a week, as if we don't know how decomposing works. So, like, my point is, I'm sure, I'm not here to apologize for Russia. I'm sure they did some stuff.
It's so blatant.
Yeah, I'm sure Russia did some stuff, but the evidence towards Russian war crime is not nearly as strong as the on-video evidence that we got Ukrainians doing war crimes, fucking torturing their own civilians. Like the Romas, they tie up to the poles, right? We had like video evidence of shit like Ukrainians do, but then they'd be like, we got this vague accusation of war crimes that Russia did. And then Russia like, all right, bet, let's investigate Bucha. Then the United States was like, nah, we don't want no investigation. The West was like, no investigation. I'm like, how does this not trigger anyone's bullshit detector? Russia like, investigate it. But anyway, that's my little tangent.
I think Dr. Kareem
we got Kareem
is
here
backstage. So if you're ready, we can bring him in and begin the beginning stages of this conversation here. So let's bring him in, and I will tell what's up, Dr. Kareem.
Yeah, hi there. Good. Just woke up, so it's early morning here, but I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Yeah, my brother Kareem looking sharp. And I want to give a shout out, my man Kareem, because I'm super happy we got Gerald Horn on this show, right?
Yeah.
And I want you guys to know it was Kareem that did it. That was Kareem.
Right on,
So,
Kareem.
Kareem was like, "Man, you gotta give me credit, bro. That's a big gift. I got you, man, because I am hyped for that, man." When you told me that you got Gerald Horn, I was like, "What? What?" But anyway, that was Kareem guys who did that.
and Vijay Prashad as well. So
we got we got Vijay Prashad. See, how did I?
Wow, you about to drop your drink there.
I don't know why that slipped my brain. It just did. I got a lot of shit going on. I'm stressed.
Yeah. So as everybody, our audience can see, this summit is going to be a great summit. Make sure you save the date, April 29th through May 1st. But let me before we let's give a little time for Dr. Professor Zungas to get here. But let me begin. Because I picked up my uncle today. He's from Texas. He lives in Texas, Houston, and he's young. He's the youngest, right? My mom is the sibling above him, right? So he's the youngest. And I was talking to him, so I found out today my uncle is revolutionary thinking, just like us. Like I'm talking to him, and he's hearing me talk. And I can see him getting excited, like he didn't know I was this way either. Like he's like, "What?" He's hearing me talk, right? But anyway, we begin to talk about trauma and our ancestors. He's talking because I'm asking him about grandfather, great grandfather. He's like, "No, they were born in slavery. They were sharecroppers. His mom and dad." And I'm like, "When they go out to fields, oh, they work from sunup to sundown." I did, you didn't see them. No, didn't know the births. They didn't know their birthday. I'm like, when did you celebrate their birthdays? We didn't know when their birthday was. Can you imagine, Nick, Dr. Kareem, not even knowing the day you were born and not even having a place to go to find out when you were born? Not knowing, he was saying, well, I was asking him, well, where's, grandma's family from? She says she's from Oregon. She thinks she's from Oregon. It's never for sure, because you're just being moved over here, not telling you where you're going or anything like that, right? So then we're talking about. I'll jump, Professor Zunkazin. How are you? I'm just giving a background about this conversation I had with my uncle, because it ties into this trauma, this conversation we're going to have. We begin to talk about our ancestors, or his grandfather, who was born into slavery. Just talking about the trauma, and he was telling me, he was like, no, he was like, I was there. It's like on the field. He's like, black people, black moms having to have their babies in the cotton fields. Just place the newborn right there on something and continue picking cotton. You know how traumatic that would be? And then he told me, he was like, the other thing that would happen is, imagine you're at home with your wife and the white guy just shows up and say, hey, get the fuck out of here. And he just takes your wife in your bed, in your house. You know how traumatic that is? And then he tells me this story. He says, my aunt, this is him talking, my father, my dad's sister, looked like a white woman. And nobody talked about the fact that they knew she was a product of a rape. But it was something you didn't talk about. So what I'm saying is to say, these things are so traumatic. Just imagine these things so traumatic. He told me you would go out in the fields, and when you came back, your daughter has been sold off. You're not seeing her again. So when he's telling me these stories, this is when I start to think about this topic. Yeah, just thinking about what he said about this. This is it's traumatic, and it's traumatic to think about another person going through that for me. So it wasn't planned to have this conversation on the day that we're gonna have this conversation, but I'm glad that happened so that it kind of brought into focus this topic for me. So today's topic is supposed to be focused on more of trauma from the police state, and that's where I want to focus. But I understand we may bleed into other things as far as trauma. And I'm glad I had Nick here because Nick, you're the one that knows a lot about the police state and what they're doing to the Black community and to people in general. So Nick, I'm going to ask you to kind of, if somebody came to you, Nick, and said, "Hey, tell me about what policing is like in the United States. Can you tell me this? Describe it to me. Like I'm a Black person and I live in another country. I have no idea what's happening over here."
I have.
You know what I'm saying? Like, how would you talk to them about that, Nick?
I will have a good example for them because we was talking about how the NYPD has been waging an offensive against homeless people. Now, to just paint the picture for people who are not from this country, the NYPD cops, they make six figures. You guys know that? When you see the video of the homeless camps being raided by NYPD police, let's reframe this, okay? So I would tell this person, you have an armed militia of people who make over $100,000 a year. They all make six figures, and they are violently kicking out homeless people. A group of armed people who make six figures are waging an offensive campaign and stealing the stuff from people who have nothing. What is that other than class war, right? What is that other than a hired militia of the rich to clean up the quote unquote filth? Because that's how they see them, and they deserve to get the stuff taken as well. On top of that, so there are a lot of people who misunderstand this issue. There's a lot of violence that the police state is responsible for, but there are a lot of people who deem themselves class conscious now. It's very trendy to call yourself class consciousness, even though you have no discipline, you have no knowledge, you don't know what that means. People think they're class conscious, but they'll support the police state that steals more wealth from workers than criminals do via civil asset forfeiture. I'm talking about how, and when I covered them stealing equipment from homeless people at the homeless camps, they will give them no warning. And then they will say, "Oh, you committed a front by staying here, so this is now the state's." So how can you be class conscious? And this is the last thing I'll say. I'll pass it back to you guys. How can you be class conscious? And this is why I get people at. How do you be class conscious if you support these people whose only job is to steal wealth, right? We talking about trauma. We talking about how that affects, especially our community. Imagine the cumulative effects of this wealth extraction. And I don't like to mince words. What it is a wealth transfer from the white community. They are stealing wealth from poor workers, Black people, Latinos that they are targeting through broken windows policing. That is literally what it is. That's why it's one of the most concerning issues to me. And it makes no sense why anyone who considered themselves anti-capitalist, left of center, would support this police state, right? So that's how I would explain it. And I think that would be a good way to open their eyes once you highlight the fact that, yo, this is a militia of people who make 3 times more than the average American worker. 60% of workers live paycheck to paycheck, but NYPD, they're making 6 figures easily, assaulting poor people.
Let me now, I'm going to go to Dr. Kareem and then Professor. Can you just tell, for those that may have been meeting you for the first time, just give a little bit about yourself, your background before we get into asking you questions, Dr. Kareem. I'll let you go first to just tell people who you are and your background in your field.
Yeah, hello. I come from the Netherlands, Europe, former colonial power. My dad is from Algeria. My mom is from the Netherlands, so I'm a mixed. Netherlands, former colonial power, Algeria, former colonized country. So that stuff is essential in the things I do. I work as a professor at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, where I work for the Department of Global Political Economy, and I'm specialized in social psychology, where I really focus on the interaction of large systems with our individual psychology, and in particular systems that promote inequality. So I have three obsessions. That is colonialism, capitalism, white supremacy. What these three large-scale historic systems do with our individual psychology and how we are surviving in these global ideology/systems is something, how that interacts with our individual psychology is something that I'm very, very interested in. And that's pretty much a bit in a nutshell what I do and what my interests are. I'm severe anti-racist, I'm severe anti-colonialist, and I hate the fact that we are living in such an unequal world. And I spent my career on trying to tackling how we can get rid of this severe inequality that we see around the world. That's a bit who I am.
Absolutely. And Professor. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you also kind of just describe yourself and your background? Absolutely. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And I thought Dr. Kareem was going to be speaking more, but all right. I am Anthony Zenkis. I am a social worker, a social work educator, a professor. I teach in the Graduate School of Social Work at Columbia University, as well as in the Department of Social Work at Adelphi University, which is on Long Island. And my background is working with trauma and trauma victims. So my expertise on trauma originally came from working with victims of rape and sexual assault, domestic violence, and child abuse. And then I started, because I've always been a political activist, I really started looking at the connections between trauma and poverty and racism, and how inequality affects us, similar to what Dr. Kareem is working on. Although the difference is I don't do primary research, I just brag about the excellent research people like Kareem do. So and so that's my background. I'm an activist, a lightning rod on Twitter. People,
you can say that again.
People go after you. People who are invested in things staying the same don't like anybody who tells the truth, which is why Nick and Jay and Sabby and Jay and all the others on your amazing network are deal with the level of suppression that you are dealing with. And so let me just say this: there is no more, regardless of what happens with Elon Musk, and I don't know what's going to happen with Twitter, but I know what's happening now, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or YouTube or Google. There is really no difference between the establishment in our government and the establishment in our media. And they do not want us to have conversations like this. Strong, radical Black voices are being actively suppressed. And, like Kareem, it's something that troubles me greatly. We can't find solutions to problems if we can't even have the conversation without being muffled, which is what's happening. So, I'm happy to be part of this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you both for just kind of talking about your expertise. Now, I guess I can start here. Is there a different type of trauma that comes from an event where the person is seen as a good guy? In other words, if somebody goes through something traumatic, a robbery. That's a bad guy. That should be traumatic. Is it different when the trauma is connected to a person who's supposed to be a good guy? In other words, if a cop shoots somebody, kills them, just like they killed Patrick Lyoya, right? They kill him. Is that trauma that the family's going to feel different? Because there's going to be, you were killed by a good person. You were killed by a good guy. Like the level of justice they're going to get because the cop was a police officer or the person was a police officer is very minimal, if any. If any. Very similar to like the George Floyd conviction, where it wasn't first degree murder and it didn't get the maximum sentence. So my question is, what type of trauma, or is it different trauma when it comes from the police state than any other state? And I'll start with Professor Zankas.
Okay. I do think it is. I mean, the way trauma plays out in our bodies and our brains, trauma is trauma. The brain doesn't know where it comes from. But when it, as far as the way the manifestations of it, and what I'm talking about is, depression, anxiety, physical illness, all those things that can happen because of trauma are going to happen regardless of what the trauma is, or can happen regardless of what the trauma is. But you bring up an interesting point, and when a person can get support and know that people understand that something terrible happened to them and it wasn't their fault and there's nothing wrong with them, the ability to recover is far different than if a person is, dismissed, criminalized. We criminalize Black bodies in the United States. We criminalize especially Black men, but not only. I mean, Sandra Bland being one example of it.
Right.
The other thing about racism that I think is important is that, a trauma can happen from anything. You could be in a terrible car accident, right? And maybe you can't walk for 6 months. That's traumatic, potentially very traumatic. But it was a singular event. When a person is traumatized because of their identity, right? The color of their skin, their facial features, whatever it is, the way they look, the sounding of their name, any of the things that people are traumatized, or victims of racism for, that's something that's ongoing. It's not, I can't say 3 years ago the terrible thing happened. Yes, it's traumatic. I'm working on it. It's not happening now. Obviously, the trauma tape will play over in your head over and over. But with racism, every day you walk out of the house, every day you turn on the news, it's happening. It's constant. There's no ability to catch one's breath or recover. And then there's the belief, in order for us to heal from trauma, we need to see ourselves as worthy of healing. And if, in a white supremacist society, white supremacy is upheld by the daily reinforcement of the toxic belief that people without white skin, specifically in the United States, Black people, are defective. So when you put all that together, the trauma is far, far worse. And recovery is much harder. And I'll throw one thing out. If you look at the families, I once made a list of this because I'm thinking about writing an article about it and I have to sketch it out. Family members of people who were killed by police who then died. So, okay, Khalif Browder wasn't killed by police, but he was killed by the criminal justice system. His mother died very, very young, right? Look up Khalif Browder for the audience members that aren't familiar. There's a bunch of things on YouTube and there's some articles about it. Eric Garner's daughter, Erica Garner, died very young. There was a young woman who was an aunt, and she was babysitting her nephew, playing video games in his bedroom, and the police saw lights on, shot into the room and killed her. Her father died within months. And we can go down the list. It's very common that this trauma has a ripple effect through the family and through the community.
Thank you. And I'll bring you in here, Dr. Kareem. And Nick, you can jump in with a question whenever you want after this first question, after Dr. Kareem speak. Same sort of question. It's like, it's almost like when it involves the police state and the police state is seen as the good guys, it's like a double traumatic experience, because it's like, not only am I losing somebody, but how they went out is always going to be tainted as, oh, he was just this and that's why he got, you know what I'm saying? Oh, he was just whatever, the cops, killed him, that's all. Like it's a devaluing, even more, a prolonged devaluing of the life. And I just can't imagine from a parent's point of view, like, that perspective. So Dr. Kareem, I'll bring you in. You heard what the professor said. What are your thoughts? What say you on this particular question?
Yeah, so many things. So I think Anthony already said many good things. I very much agree with pretty much everything he says. I think one of the important aspects is indeed denial. So the denial of your trauma by your society when the police are doing it, or when you are a victim of racism, which is also always denied in Western society. Racism doesn't exist, is extremely traumatic. And the fact, of course, that it is chronic. Okay, so exactly what Anthony just said, that you are continuously bombarded with the fact that you are not a full member of society, not even a full human being. Okay, you watch the news, you watch movies, you see people who look like you getting killed all the time, demonized, you name it. And that chronic aspect of your dehumanization is extremely traumatic. You just cannot escape it. That's the problem. You cannot escape. You cannot even hide it. You can put on some nice clothes. You just can't hide it. Okay, your being is continuously demonized, and that puts you under a continuous threat, so to speak. So that is extremely traumatic, and I think the denial aspect is very important. I mean, when we see the news and when we see the denial of that the police are doing something wrong, or you always see the victim portrayed as the criminal, already me, an academic, somebody who has a pretty good position in life, the intense rage I feel when I see that happening is already a very traumatic kind of emotion. Okay, imagine being the victim or related to the victim themselves. So, and I wanted to get back to what you started with, CJ, and I think it would be actually a good topic for a show. The historical aspect, the historical roots of the kind of traumas that we feel today. Okay, you talked about slavery and what that did to people. Imagine, like you, Nick, Anthony, me, we are discussing here, we are understanding that we have the right to be free, all of us, okay, that we have the right to be equal human beings. Imagine in those days being born as a black child on a plantation. You don't even know better. This is your reality. You've never learned you can be an independent human being. You are born into that system. And that is also that is one of the reasons why it could go on for so long, because people were born into their own oppression and never knew there was a different kind of reality. And you still see that with people around the world today. To avoid that rage and to avoid that anger and the effects of denial and chronic trauma, to avoid the effects, because that would motivate mass uprisings of people, you had to make sure that people internalize their own oppression. And that's what our system is so good at. make people internalize that they are inferior to the European. And it's not only black people, it's Arabs, it's Latin Americans, it's Chinese. Every single human being who is not classified as European white in some way, shape, or form should feel itself, or him or herself, or their self, inferior in comparison to people who are European white. Our system is extremely good at promoting that through media, through movies, through news, through propaganda, to such an extent that a lot of people in the former colonies still are deeply internalized, have deeply internal colonization, you could say, and colonial mentality, feeling inferior. And that is the power of a white supremacist system. It's not only that it traumatizes you, but it actually makes people believe that that trauma is deserved because they are unworthy compared to those who are European white. Even though they may consciously say, no, we're all equal, it is so powerful at putting that in your mind that European whites are, so to speak, the ones that we had, the kind of humanity we aspire, that people feel that kind of inferiority unconsciously. And one last thing before I talk on for too long, is that this is so amazing about white supremacist and colonial culture. What is so amazing about it? It's that it puts the onus on its victims. In other words, the victims are the savages. The victims are the rapists. The victims are the criminals. While the most savage, most criminal behavior ever in human history comes from colonial culture the past 500 years. There's nothing like it with regards to genocide and mass rape and you name it. So it's a fascinating aspect, and that's extremely traumatic once you realize these things, how insanely unfair this is, you know. But that's what I wanted to bring in.
The point that you just brought up, Kareem, is why I'm stealing something that I saw from Chomsky, where he was saying that the global South is the civilized part of the world, right? And I used to have these arguments when I was younger with, there always be like these racist people that would say, oh, well, black people deserve over policing because they inherently violent. Black people are violent. Look at the crime rate. They always see that. I'm like, sir, it wasn't black people who wiped out and killed millions of indigenous people on our land. It wasn't black people who killed millions of people in Iraq, starved millions of people in Afghanistan. So you notice how the different ways they would treat violent offenses. What is deemed a violent offense by the empire, they count as official. Look at the crime rate in the black community. But look at the crime rate in ICE, based on what I would define a crime, right? But anyway, I love that point that Kareem made, because that's something that we have to repeat, because that's a process of decolonizing our mind. Like when I see our the Dore test proves that. Do you want to add a little bit more to that, Kareem? The Dore test?
Yeah, so I'm actually planning to use that in one of my future research studies or future studies as well. This is a very interesting psychological experiment. For those of you in the audience who don't know, it's called the Dore test, and where they ask little children of all skin colors. Okay, you have a white doll and you have a black doll, and you just ask 3-4-year-old children to sit in front of those dolls and say, who's the good doll, who's the bad doll. The majority of the children will immediately point at the white doll, that's the good doll, black doll, it's the bad doll, even if they're black themselves. And then, who's the pretty doll, who's the ugly doll? They will point at the white doll, that's the pretty doll, ugly doll, that's the black doll. If you are 3-4 years old and you automatically react in that way, then you can do two things. Okay, in old Western science, okay, we call it hegemonic science. You would say that's human nature, okay, because we have that inherent idea of whiteness being more beautiful than black, and therefore little children also do that, and everybody in general does that. But I say something different. I'm a cultural psychologist, and I say no. We are not born with any preference, and this is true. If you check with newborn babies don't have a preference for light or dark skin. The only thing they have preference for are smiling faces and attractive faces with regards to symmetry. But there is no skin color preference. What happens is that our cultures, from very early on, in the most minute ways, such as bedtime stories. Okay, she had beautiful fair skin, a princess, blah 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 blah. putting on a television, commercials. You walk on the streets. People who are rich, people you're looking around. Who are the cleaners? Who are the people with money? Immediately as a child, this creates mental schemas of who are worthy human beings, who are unworthy human beings. You immediately see a hierarchy of what is beautiful, what is not beautiful. And these schemas create how you see the world and yourself. So the Dole test shows that the schemas these little children already have are mental schemas that immediately trigger them to think when they see a white-skinned person, that's beautiful, that's good. When they see a dark-skinned person, that's ugly, that's bad, not good. Imagine when they are growing up as adults, okay, when they walk on the street, or they are an employer and they have to hire people, or their daughter comes and introduces a boyfriend, whether that boyfriend is black or white, or any situation you can imagine, sitting next to someone in the train. You don't want to sit next to that person because the person has dark skin, whatever. These mental schemas are created by our culture. That culture is asymmetrically influenced by the West, so it's global. And therefore, global, you see that the Dole test has the same effect. This is not human nature. This is the asymmetrical effect of white supremacist culture that comes from Europe and the United States and influences people all around the world.
Can there be more trauma? Can there be more trauma through physical acts? So, like, because when we're talking about trauma and talking about the police state, they can inflict pain in many different ways, trauma in many different ways, not just physical pain. So if I have a fine that I can't afford, for example, but I have to pay it, and that puts me behind on something else, what sort of traumatic trauma am I experiencing there? Economic trauma, stress, because I have to pay this big fine, right? And then there's trauma like I'm innocent, but I'm waiting in jail for a trial that's a year away, but I'm innocent. So there's that, I would see that as more of like a psychological sort of trauma. My basic point is that the police state inflicts trauma on so many different levels. I feel like people aren't taking into account all of the trauma that the police state inflicts, because we only think of it as, oh, they shot somebody, that's the trauma. And that's not only the trauma. There's a lot of other traumas. For example, I had a warrant one time. What was my warrant was for a ticket, a moving violation that I didn't pay. Do you know they caught me, and I had my daughter when she was little, they pulled me out and arrested me. That's a traumatic experience for her. You get what I'm saying? So in what ways can the police state inflict trauma that doesn't have anything to do with like physical contact? I can think of Children Protective Services. There's a lot of trauma that's inflicted there. So I'll go to you, Professor. Since you have a background in trauma, can you speak to how trauma affects kids whose parents are in the system? You get what I'm saying? Like, so they're not directly, but it's my father's not here. My father can't take me to the father-daughter dance. My father can't do this. So can you speak to how the police state inflicts trauma indirectly through kids through their parents?
Yeah. Did you mean me? Or
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Because he's doctor. Okay. And first of all, wow. Somebody wrote Kareem is fire. And I'm like, yeah, that was right on. And I always learn when I speak with with you all. Everyone's got their own little piece here, and it just makes me, think things through a little differently. And I feel like, so, in the background of child abuse, I can say this: it is widely known in the trauma field that we don't compare traumas. A kid's hurt, a kid's hurt, but we do know this, that the research shows that emotional abuse, psychological abuse, can have some of the most deleterious, harmful, long-lasting effects. Long after the bruises go, the effects of emotional abuse can last a lifetime. And that's, child abuse is just an example, but that's how humans respond to that experience. And I would throw sexual abuse in there, not because of the physical aspect of it, because the perpetrator in sexual abuse is usually someone the child knows and looks up to. So it's a very strong emotional abuse component there. So looking at state-sponsored violence, whether it's through the court system, what we call what I call the injustice system, or through police over-policing, police acting as an occupying army in a city. And somebody very aptly mentioned earlier in our conversation tonight, that must be how the children in Palestine feel.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I saw that comment.
So, this word there's a couple of words that just drive me nuts. People just use it all the time, like gaslighting. Everything you don't like is gaslighting. And every time someone's violent and you don't like them, it's terrorism. Well, terrorism has specific definitions. And the idea of terrorism, you don't have to kill everybody. You just have to injure and harm a few people and make sure everybody sees it. When we look at problems of over-policing in neighborhoods that I believe are being traumatized by that over-policing, they don't have to hurt everybody. They don't have to hurt most people physically. It's the presence, the knowing that you can't walk. I think about Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, Between the World and Me. The thing that stood out to me the most from that book, well, there was a few things, the story of Prince, but also how he described that when he walked down the street, he had to change his expression based on who he walked by or who walked by him. And if it was an authority figure who was almost always white, he had to kind of give like a non-threatening look to his face. And I thought, and I think he might have even said this, you do that so much, you lose how you really feel at any given moment. So the injuries of over-policing, of what I call like those occupying armies, are deep soul wounds that go beyond that event. Michael Brown's body laying in the street in Ferguson for 4.5 hours in the hot August sun, covered by a sheet. All of the other things that went along with his killing by the police in Ferguson. That's how they treated him. And you see that crowd of people in those photos standing around looking. And what are they thinking? It's interesting. I think about a Black Lives Matter rally I went to in Harlem, and it was after the terrorist attack in, was it Charlotte at the church, or was it Charlottesville? Remember
Charlottesville was the tiki torches, I think, was Charlottesville,
right,
I think.
Right.
Yeah.
The Home Depot tiki torch.
Yeah, there we go.
Insanity. But it was Charlottesville, Charlotte. And that's a terrorist attack. 9 people were killed. That's terrorism. They didn't set out to kill every Black person in that town. They didn't have to. They set out to terrorize every Black person by killing 9. And, you look at that and you see that is terrorism. It is no different than what the Israeli Defense Forces do to Palestinian children. And then to top it off, like, yeah, if my house is robbed, I can pretty much assume as a white dude that if, I'm a witness and they catch the people who did it, that the court system is going to treat me well. I've been a victim. Why wouldn't they? But having black skin and knowing I'm probably not going to get treated well. So what does that do on a daily basis? And I just want to do a little bit what Kareem did and dial back a little, because there is a connection to what happened during the time of slavery. And that connection is, so trauma affects us on a cellular level. It's not just a sad memory about a bad thing that happened. Our body reacts to trauma on a cellular level. It changes our entire body chemistry. And the whole belief that it's all in the genes, and you were talking about that with the doll experiment, it really stuck with me, is it's on purpose. It is meant to let society off the hook for the consequences of oppression, the trauma from oppression and white supremacy. Because if I can say you're defective, well then, not only do I have justification to over police you because you can't behave, you need to be controlled. Not only that, your pain doesn't matter as much.
Mm-hmm.
And then, what we know is this: trauma can change the way our genes express themselves. And genes are meant to adjust to the environment. It's a pretty ingenious thing that evolution or God or whatever you believe did. But when the environment is fear-inducing and threatening, when you feel othered and less than, the chemical changes that occur can affect all the systems of the body. And the most insidious thing is these genetic changes, they're called epigenetic changes, can be passed on for generations. So literally, trauma can be in somebody's blood, and it is. Descendants of slavery, descendants of the trauma of white supremacist slavery, already physically have been changed by the experiences of their great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, because it gets passed on generations and generations. Someone just said memories exist going back at least 6 generations in every person. I mean, and this is not just from trauma. Anything you do, can affect, we don't know why, or we're not really sure why certain things get passed on and others don't, but we do know this: trauma can be. Grandchildren and great-grandchildren of people who were in the Holocaust, where Jews and millions of others were killed in Nazi Germany, can suffer the same consequences. Well, we had our own Holocaust right here. We call it slavery. So when you have that set up, plus you're living in an unjust society right now, it's no wonder life expectancy is less. So I'll just be real quick because I don't want to take up too much time. But so what do white people do? Or in reaction to this, they say, well, look at your diet. You probably shouldn't eat so much of this kind of food. And, maybe you should exercise more. Again, blaming you without realizing that, our physical health responds to that trauma. So life expectancy of Black Americans is less, not just because of poverty, but that has something to do with it. But it also has to do with the generational trauma that's been passed on and how it creates a toxic chemical environment in our body. And which is why, despite that, Black people achieve amazing things in our society. And I've said this many times, which is, and they've had to work 100 times as hard as any white person did to achieve those things, because they've had to overcome not only the deficits of the current situation, but of that which has been passed on to them. That's a crime. Medical science is starting to look at it, but still, what do? You've got a problem. You're angry. You're violent. You're rageful. Here's a pill. Instead of looking at like, well, where is that coming from? So this needs to be a cross-cultural awareness.
To back up what Professor Jenkins is saying, this has been known by science for quite a while. Why do you think children? I remember I was a big pussy when I was younger. Why do you think children are afraid of the monster under the bed? I still remember the kid was like a trauma that was like. I remember I was a kid. It was like I remember I was crying to my mom one time because I swear to God I saw something moving in my closet. I'm talking about like when I was very small, right? Now the reason that is because now thinking about how humans evolved, where a lot like especially in the early society days, it's very common to be killed by predators, especially as a kid, right? Like fucking lion, tigers, bears, oh my, that kind of stuff. So this is the kind of trauma that was passed down, the trauma of us being afraid of monsters. Now, this is something that everyone can understand now. Imagine that imagine that trauma done on a massive systematic scale against a community, right? So I'll talk about the Native American genocide, the Native American Holocaust, no matter what you want to call it. And someone put up the right number, so I wanted to show you guys. 100 million 100 million death toll figure, right? And then to like kind of like skirt this insane act of human violence and trauma that we can only imagine, they will say stuff like, oh, well, Native Americans, they were more prone to drink, right? They're more prone to violence. Well, maybe because they are living with the trauma of you guys killing 100 million of their own kin, right? And me and CJ talk about this a lot, right? And I talked about this yesterday with Olayemi, the anxiety that is caused by police in schools. Why do you guys think that is? Especially black kids. Like I've never been, even before I knew police abolition theory, like this should have only been probably good at police abolition for maybe like 4 or 5 years. But even as a kid, I would see the cop like, ugh, what the fuck? Oh my God, the cops over here. You know why? Slave patrols. The police enforcing the black codes, them being the shit of our ancestors during the civil rights era that lasted over 100 years. The police was complicit with not only ignoring lynchings of black men, they was coordinating lynchings of black men with white supremacist groups. How do you guys think, like whenever there are like reports of some black man whistling at a white woman, how do you think they find them? You think they didn't have Google back then? The police helped them. Because they were part of the KKK, right? So imagine this trauma being passed down, and I always love to bring up my indigenous brothers and sisters, and I think it was Zink, maybe Kareem as well, that would bring up the Palestinians. And I want to show you guys this. What do you guys think? We talking about the trauma on children, right? What do you think is the trauma? Oh, sorry, this is the wrong one.
I mean, it's trauma there too. It's trauma there too.
It's
but
the same thing, right? It's the same exact thing. Because I'm mad I can't spoil it. I'll about to share that.
Look at this shit right here.
The Israel Defense Force
Can you make that bigger?
Palestinian man in front of a child, and they do this all the time. They will beat the shit out of a child's parents right in front of them. There was another video that I was looking for. The funny thing is, this is not the video I was looking for. I found this one. I'm like, well, I guess this works too. Because there was another video I found.
That guy has guts, though. My goodness, that boy has guts. He's not scared at all. Impressive, man. This is
look at that. Look at that. Do you understand? You understand that child is good.
The sound on, guys. I don't have the sound on.
Like to the day he dies, that child will remember that. He will be 80 on his deathbed. That's gonna be flashing in his face.
Why would Hamas send a rocket into Israel?
Listen, I
don't understand.
To the audio. I will listen to the audio. I'm a
terrorist.
Listen to him scream.
Okay, let's listen. Go ahead.
That's a young father protecting his boy. That's a young father protecting his boy.
But sorry, go ahead, Kareem.
Oh no, I just wanted to say that that's a young father protecting his boy. I mean, there are just 10 of these fascist soldiers attacking you, and he is not letting them how can you say it, degrade himself. I find it very heroic, to be very honest. I find it very impressive. And just to jump back on the things you just said about how this all is so traumatic, and you talked about trauma going from generation to generation. There is something that they say, they also it's called post-colonial stress syndrome. Okay, the fact that we are all repeating the stress that comes from colonial times. And why is that? And Anthony was already saying that nests itself into our genes, but it's also just being reproduced by our cultures. It's that our culture just doesn't change. Okay, the fact that the police is now doing the same. Thank you very much, Soya. Just shaved it off. Yeah, but the fact that the police is doing the same to people of color as hundreds of years ago shows that our culture is not changing. It's evolving. Like, things are changing. Like, the weapons are becoming more sophisticated. Propaganda becomes more sophisticated. In the old days, you had religion. Now you have Hollywood, or then you had Hollywood. Now you have social media. It always morphs, but it continues that system that in turn makes us internalize this kind of human hierarchy, between different groups of people. And I still think that it's so important to focus on the fact. I think one of the biggest problems that we are facing right now is the fact that it's denied. It's still denied. Like, we are still tiny channels discussing what's going on, and the mainstream is completely unaware of it. It's very, very frustrating. Like, the severe unfairness of our culture and the inequality it creates, and the fact that it's being denied is adds to the trauma. Okay, the denial of people's suffering is so traumatic and so enraging. And I think it's so important that we educate people all around the world what is going on. And just to quickly to say, get back to the whole idea of Holocaust, what Nick just said. Don't forget that European/Western colonialism created multitude of Holocausts all around the world. Mm-hmm. I want you guys to investigate what the French did in Algeria. I want you to investigate what the British did in India, Malaysia, what the Dutch did in South Africa, Indonesia, what the Americans did in the Philippines. Okay, what the Belgians did in the Congo, and I can go on and on. Millions and millions and hundreds of millions of people were eradicated. Okay, and that is the kind of culture that we are still living in. Okay, that's Western culture that did that, and that is the culture that we are part of right now. Okay, it's just amazing how is it possible that so many hundreds of millions of human beings have been literally erased from this earth, and we hardly speak about it. Think about it. We hardly speak about it. That shows the kind of culture we're in. And that also explains, for example, why we're talking about Ukrainians all the time and why they are being received with open arms, while Haitians or Muslims are chased away from the border, or Mexicans, or by being imprisoned into camps where underage little kids are separated from their parents and being sexually abused by guards and police officers and ICE guards and all these kind of people. That's the culture we live in.
Dr. Kareem, and it's so infuriating to see them talk themselves into how that's okay. Like, it's okay that we concern about the Ukraine and not Palestine. Oh, here's the reason why that's different. Oh, over there too. Here's another reason why. Like, it's always a reason why white innocence, because that's really what we're talking about. I remember you using this phrase before, Dr. Kareem, where it's like, all of the atrocities committed by Western culture. And like you said, we don't talk about all the millions of bodies that have been murdered because there's no value in Western culture to those bodies. They're collateral damage. They're, oh well, oh well, that's it. That's really how they look at it. But I do have another question about the trauma being passed
Do you mind
down.
if I ask something here, CJ?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll pass right back to you because I want to add something to that as well, because especially with your guys' takes and why we've been highlighting the crimes against the Palestinians in Afghanistan and the starvation that go on in Afghanistan, because it's a coordinated effort to devalue our lives. That's the purpose. And I've seen actually, like, it's not only like just an anecdotal experience. The entire Democratic Party are Zionists. Right? All of them are. All of them support Israel, but all of them stand with Ukraine. What does that mean? Now, me and Kareem, we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about this more in detail tomorrow. We're gonna have International Legislative Coalition where we talk.
Are you bringing it back?
Yeah, where we dive. Yeah, we're gonna dive into the Israel because it's been so crazy. But look at this. We just showed that video of that kid being assaulted. This is their lives being devalued, right? And we're gonna talk about this maybe more in depth tomorrow. But this is a death to Arab chant from Israeli colonizers. And I ain't playing the audio, but they like very excited about saying death to Arabs. These are the same people. I've seen protests in Israel protesting Russia for their occupation of Ukraine, while you literally have giant crowds in Israel chanting death to Arabs, while Natalie Bennett, that psychopath, is ethnically cleansing their people, right? So we'll dive into more tomorrow. But you guys,
can you keep that up? Keep that up.
Oh wait, I'll play it back up. Let me play it back up.
Yeah, only because I want people to have a visual when I say it's what I see when I see this video, Nick, is I see what was happening, during slavery. The white people that was cheering, right? The white people that was cheering the hangings, the people that attended hangings of black people, they literally had, this is an event. They have served food, they have hangings. It's like the level of indoctrination for you to be chanting this when you can clearly turn on the TV and see all the brutality. It's the same sort of indoctrination that you can see that they're raping and murdering slaves, and you're okay with that. Like, that level of indoctrination, to me, I was speaking to this about with my uncle about the indoctrination. Go ahead.
You can continue. I just want to show you this. It's very common of the Israeli Zionist psychopaths to cheer on the brutality, and not like they just don't know about it. This burned into my mind because this is when they launched an offensive and they was bombing Israel. And then there was videos on Twitter that were flowing around as well where they were treating it like a tourist event. Oh my God, the Israeli bomb. You see the Palestinian kid? He got blown up. This is how they treat it, CJ.
Yeah, if I can quickly jump in on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Absolutely.
And I think Anthony would agree with me. This is also a form of trauma, eh? The fact that what these people are doing, this is a total lack of humanity. I mean, to be very honest, even if I could choose to be in a powerful position, I would not want to become a human being like this. You lost all your soul, you lost all your humanity. You can see people get murdered and raped, and you are cheering. That means your soul is destroyed. Your moral compass, your humanity is gone. Once you're at that point, I cannot believe you can go back to becoming a warm human being, a human being who cares for other people. And I think that's the double traumatic aspect of our Western white supremacist cultures. Mm-hmm. It's not only that it makes people feel bad about themselves, an everyday struggle going out of the door because they feel dehumanized. It's also the fact that a lot of the people who come from the high status majority group, you could say, don't realize that they have been systematically stripped of their humanity. Because if you see some indigenous communities and the way they live together, oh man, I wish we could live like that, because we are group beings. Imagine we can live in a group every day, going out of the door and feeling good, seeing your fellow group members, being happy. You care for each other. It exists. Believe me, it exists. Human beings can be like that.
Capitalists destroy that on purpose.
Capitalism absolutely, totally eradicates and destroys that, because it creates human hierarchies in every segment of society of life. And the moment we get human hierarchies, okay, based on artificial identities, we are stripped of our humanity. And when you see that, when you see people in our societies denying racism, denying the deaths of people of color in the Middle East or Africa or any other parts of the world, denying slavery, denying genocide, always saying things like, "Oh, pulling the race card. You're doing this."
Right. I hate that.
These people,
I hate that
without realizing it, are also traumatized. They have been stripped of their humanity. They cannot feel empathy for you. They cannot, because they have learned culturally to not see you as part of the human group. This is terrible, to disconnect yourself from humanity, from the rest of the world, to such an extent that you see that the West is now completely isolating itself. We are human beings, and the rest of the world is not worth it. I think that's an extremely traumatic aspect of the West.
Absolutely.
And the reason why I said I think it's capitalism, because I think capitalism purposely try to destroy its community, also because they want to destroy worker solidarity. They want to keep us all pitted against each other so we don't challenge the ruling class. And so this you see how the establishment and our capitalist class is obsessed with pushing division. You're supposed to be competing against your fellow workers instead of coming together as a collective. People are afraid to talk to their neighbors because our local news media, and I see this happen all the time with my elders and my family, where they're like afraid of people because the media wants to. They always show like crime. They don't show the ruling class crimes, by the way. They don't show the crimes of the police. They don't show the crimes of the military. They don't show the crimes of white-collar criminals that's stealing wealth from us, from illegally foreclosing on our homes, for example, like Wall Street did. They will show like petty crimes, right? And they amplify it times a billion to get people afraid of their neighbor. And I see it, and it's extremely effective. You see these people like they locked in their own little bubble in their own little community. What makes you guys think humans are meant to live that way? We are social creatures, and we post. Yes, you get burnt when there's trust. But I learned in my older age, man, I'd rather get burnt a few times. I'd rather have those experiences and live in an open community style life. It's actually healthier for you instead of just being afraid of everyone. And I speak from experience because I know people like that, where they just afraid something like always gonna happen. And as I got older, as I read more theory, right, I learned. I'm like, I think this is by design, man. I think they want us to be afraid of our neighbor. I think they want us to be distrustful of the other guy down the street, right? So that's why I want to add that part to what Cream said. But I want to pass it to Zinkus or CJ if you guys want to chime in.
I'm gonna let Professor jump in here because I don't think we've given him the opportunity. Is he frozen? Oh no, he's not. We haven't given you the opportunity to speak in a little while, and I know you wanted to jump in a couple of times.
Yeah, I wasn't frozen. I'm practicing standing and sitting very still and embracing stillness. It's helping me get rid of my anxiety, my first world anxiety, although we don't say first world, but I think it's okay to say first world problems. But, let's look at this. My God, there's so much to unpack here. And, I think we've got to start really, and a Revolutionary Blackout Network and your guests and regulars get it, and you do it on a regular basis. But we really need to start stepping up the offensive in educating people and verbally calling out what's happening right now. The only reason any liberal with a blue and white Ukrainian, blue and yellow Ukrainian flag on their profile on any social media platform gives a shit about Ukraine is because they're white and mostly Christian. And they're European, especially, proximity to other European countries, global north, mostly Christian, white. And the other part of it is they've been programmed to hate Vladimir Putin and believe that Vladimir Putin is the reason Trump became president, when there's no basis for that at all. Vladimir Putin is not why Trump became president. Trump became president. That's a whole other show. You've covered it many times, all of you. Hillary was a shitty candidate. She's a terrible human being. She's a grotesque member of the elite who has a sick psychopathic streak in her, the way she laughed about the disembowelment of Muammar Gaddafi, who, look, I don't think was a really nice.
You're being too nice for her. That's a too nice of a description.
Well, I think I've said this before, but I notice if I say it toward the end, I got cut off. But, you know, I find it very funny when people talk about the conspiracy theories with lizard people. I see it as a very, very good metaphor. These are not friggin' human beings. They're not. You take those masks off, and there is something under there that's not human, you know. But we're constantly on the left frustrated. Thank you, Sabby, because I was just getting to this. There is not only no solidarity with Yemen, Somalia, or Afghanistan, there's no mention of Yemen, Somalia, and Afghanistan. So let me just lay it out. All war is horrible. I feel bad about the innocent people in Ukraine, especially the children, because it's traumatic for them. You got an 11-year-old, and now they're in Poland, and they don't know what's happening, right? But if we can feel that, we need to really look at Yemen. 400,000 dead people in Yemen because the United States and Saudi Arabia is far more brutal and dictatorial and murderous than Vladimir Putin could ever dream of being. Putin is a pussycat compared to MBS. They literally, I mean, so talk about the United States hypocrisy and the liberal hypocrisy. Let's just say this, liberal Democrats are racists. They want black bodies to be afraid, and they're okay when black and brown bodies die. They elected the architect of mass incarceration, who's destroyed multiple communities across this country with his mass incarceration, Joe Biden, for the past 30 plus years, who said he didn't want his kids to grow up in a racial jungle. These people are racist. They're not just okay with racism. They don't just ignore it. They don't just look the other way. They're racist, but it's the different kind of racism. It's not the I hate this kind of person racism. It's the we're only going to defend Ukraine. We're just sending them another $800 million. So again, what's the message? If you're a brown person, you're non-Christian, you live in the Middle East and not Europe, and you live in Yemen, and the most brutal dictatorial regime in the world today, the Saudi regime, responsible for those 400,000 deaths with our weapons, 400,000. And yes, I am going to compare death counts, because when the final death count in Ukraine happens, it's not going to be 100th of that.
Not at all.
And it's not okay to kill anybody. But what's happening there is the news, mainstream media doesn't cover it. Liberals don't care. They've coined this term, this insane term. You know what I'm going to say? Whataboutism. No, I'm pointing out hypocrisy. See, all of this is about white supremacy. We can't have the white Christians in Ukraine killed. We want to be the ones in power in the global north, not Putin, who's got an economy smaller than the size of Texas. And people are like, he's going to run through Poland. He can barely run through Ukraine. All right? So that's not happening. But what's happening in Somalia, where we resumed bombing there? We had a 14-plus year war in Afghanistan. Killed, 20 years in Afghanistan, 14 years in Pakistan that nobody talks about, right? So we have war on brown people in the Middle East, black people in Africa. This is the cradle of civilization, where civilization started, and we are systematically destroying it, just like we systematically destroyed the indigenous First Nations people in the continent of North America when we colonized it. And so there is no come to Jesus, sorry for the phrase, moment among liberals about this. And so that's why when we look at the party, there are no progressives in the Democratic Party. One's AOC voted president on the Iron Dome. Think about this. Israel. And by the way, can I just say this? Fuck Israel. Fuck the IDF. Those fucking Nazi fucks doing that to these people in Palestine. And I'm not saying there aren't good people in Israel. Of course there are. I had a friend that lived in Tel Aviv for years. She was from here.
Yeah, I know several Israelis like
that's not the point.
That live in Israel. They're not
garbage. It's garbage. And that government was formed by terrorists. Yitzhak Rabin, all those people, they were all terrorists. They blew up British soldiers in the El Rashid, whatever it was, hotel. They were terrorists. And they built that nation. And so, what we have now is an inability to factually look at things. The media is controlled. They're trying to suppress us on YouTube so we can't talk about it. And, rightful rage comes out. And if you start saying these things, people are like, well, you sound crazy. Why would you say that? Because the occupation of Palestine is a war crime that the United States is funding. The United States, through all we're doing through Saudi Arabia and Yemen, Israel and Palestine, is a far bigger threat to life on this planet than Vladimir Putin could ever dream of being.
Yeah. And so, go ahead.
I'm just saying that's white supremacy, because we want to be the hegemonic rulers of the entire world. We want a unipolar world. But here's the reality. It's not unipolar, because India is like, screw you. We're not going to say anything about Russia and Ukraine. China doesn't seem to
be over half the world.
Literally over half the world is like whatever.
Let's bring in maybe more. It may be more, but go ahead. Kareem.
Let's bring in Dr. Kareem was waiting to chime in. He had a couple of points he wanted to make.
Yeah, so many good things again from Anthony. I can actually just be quiet, but there is one thing I wanted to jump in on, and that is what Anthony just said, and I want to push a little bit back. And that is that you often hear like, oh, Saudi Arabia is the most brutal dictatorship that is around there. And I totally agree. It's a brutal dictatorship that's doing undescribably evil things, also now in Yemen. But I noticed on the left, okay, I'm not going to name names, but many people can see it on YouTube. You will notice that Saudi Arabia is always the safe one to go when you want to blame the United States of hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. On the left, you always see that on the hypocritical left, and mainly the white left. I'm not trying to be racist here, but you see that mainly on white, more liberal-leaning leftists. That is the idea. That every time, but we are also supporting evil regimes. We're talking about Putin, but we're hypocrites. Saudi Arabia. So that's the safe one, because it fits the Orientalist trope. You can blame Saudi Arabia. You can blame the fact that we are the US is supporting Saudi Arabia. But if you have real courage, you would mention Israel, and they won't, because Israel is too powerful in American politics, and you see that. I find it so hypocritical, because I would say that Saudi Arabia is not the most brutal dictatorship. It fits the trope, of course, of these very misogynistic, anti-gay kind of fundamentalist guys who are ruling there, and that's totally true. Instead of these Western-looking, well-suited guys in Israel. But Israel is a colonial apartheid state that is at least as terrible as, if not more terrible, than Saudi Arabia. And I don't want to compare. I think they're all just horrible. And I've just noticed that look at it when leftists in the media space are talking about U.S. hypocrisy and about but we also support terrible regime, Saudi Arabia. No. If you're courageous, just like Chomsky did in the old days, you will mention Israel. What Israel is doing, while deeply intertwined with our political systems, I think that is something you at least should mention as well.
You're talking
That's
about
all.
what's called a PIF. You're progressive except for Palestine. You're progressive except for Palestine. There's a term for that. Go ahead, Zankus. It looked like you went forward to say something. Yeah.
I just want to insert something, but in what Kareem is saying, and then jump back to Kareem or whoever. But that Iron Dome, I do want to think about that for a second, because what it allows, I don't know how well it works. I'm assuming it's $1 billion. It probably does work. What the Iron Dome
intercepted a rocket the other day. That I was reporting on that. So
yeah, I know.
It's not 100% though. It's not 100%.
It may not be done yet, but the bottom line is it allows Israel to commit war crimes in Palestine with impunity and not have to worry about a retaliation. And that is very dangerous. So, I think we need to talk about what it is, because people are framing it and saying, oh, it's the Israeli defense. We're doing it so Israel can defend itself. No, we're doing it so Israel can attack the people of Palestine, continue to attack them and commit war crimes and not worry as much about retaliation. That's sick, right? It's arming a criminal and giving them a tank.
Exactly. I always tell people, if they have a hard time understanding why the Iron Dome is actually offensive, because this is like the use like Ilhan and Jamal Bowman will use. They said no, it's a defensive tool. Now imagine if you slaughter people, like you went to a mall, and you slaughter people and use a sword, but you have a shield, right? So usually it may be harder to like kill people if you had like a group of people like bum rushing you, but you're using your shield to hold people off, and then your shield, and then you slicing people. That's the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is the sword. Why the ethnic cleansing that they're doing is the shield. Now, one thing, I love that CJ brought the progressives except Palestine.
Yeah.
Red flags should pop up, and I've seen every progressive say this. Every single one. You ever hear someone say this? Israel has the right to defend themselves. Whenever you hear that, that is a progressive, except Palestine at the best. I mean, that's just assuming you're not just hardcore Zionist. Because what does that mean? You guys know that Israel is kicking out Palestinians from their home at gunpoint illegally. Like, there's no legal authorization for doing it. They're just doing it so they can get more Palestinian land. Right.
Let me ask you about that, Nick. See,
yeah, go ahead, CJ.
You're more versed on the Israel Palestine. I don't understand, what is the whole goal of Israel? What are they trying to do? What is your point? That's what I still haven't put my finger on. Like, outside of saying we want to kill all the Palestinians and get them the fuck out of here, I'm trying to understand, what is your point that you're doing?
So CJ, you wanna know what's funny? I'll get you right in here, Zink's here very soon. I remember like when I was trying to educate myself on this issue, it took me a while. Because of Zionist propaganda. And the funny thing is, one propaganda that they will use all the time in the United States, I hear people say stuff like, well, the Israel-Palestine conflict, it's actually just complicated, man. And I remember I used to fall for it, like, I guess there's two warring religions. Like, I remember when I was learning about this, it took me a while. I was like, all right, you got Jews warring against Muslims. I guess there must be some sort of religious conflict. And that's how it was presented. They presented like, oh, it's just Muslims and Jews fighting. Oh, it's just a long history of countries, and then I looked into, I read history. I'm like, bro, this shit is not complicated. It's probably the least complicated issue I've ever seen in my life. There was a group of people that lived there called the Palestinians, and then the West decided to implant and create a state called Israel. And ever since then, they brutalized the Palestinian people. It's literally the most simple conflict that I've ever seen. It's just when you support the colonizer, you're like, in order to justify that, you're like, oh man, it's complicated, man. I mean, technically they was there before their ancestors was there. Okay, that gives them no right to illegally seize their land.
So can the indigenous population here, can they seize back their land?
Yes, that's the obvious counterpoint, right?
Right.
That's the obvious counterpoint. Do all indigenous people have the right to violently claim their land back? Right. So I don't even have to go into that. because they want you to go into weeds like, who was there first? Who was there first? Was the Israelites here first? Were the Palestinians here first? But if you actually know the issue, that shit is irrelevant. The Palestinians was here, and you guys seized their land. And the funny thing about this, when you actually do get in the weeds, even if you accept their argument that the Israelis been there for a very long time, which I don't necessarily dispute, the same Palestinians was there too. So what gives you the right to kick them out? There's no right. But anyway, I'll get a little bit into the weeds on
Let's
that.
get Zunkus back in here.
When
Zunkus,
you dive into this, you realize how crazy Zionists are. Like, they tricked me a little bit when I first started reading this issue. I remember I used to support like the 2-state solution. I used to like listen to like some liberal suggestions on this, and I'm like, and then as I study more, once again, you get more knowledge, you get better. That one, I'm like, bro, what? This conflict, the Zionists are crazy. And then I talked to Palestinians. Also, a lot, when you get past the lies, too, there are a lot of lies. You learn their lies. You learn the whole history of it. But anyway, I know Zink is going to chime in, or we can pass it back to CJ. I'll pass it back to.
I'll just say something quick, and thank you. And that is, I see Israel as an outpost for the global North, for white Europeans in the Middle East. We used to have a reliable puppet government in almost every country that, Britain drew most of the lines, the UK did, right? Of all the countries in the Middle East, we had reliable puppet governments everywhere. We can't seem to rely on them much anymore. And Israel is a reliable outpost for NATO, for, the United States and the UK and France and those countries. And that's it, and why does it matter? Because oil is all around it, and we want to control oil. And it's not because we don't have enough in this country. We do. We're like the biggest oil producer in the world. It's because we want to control who has access to it. We're afraid of China. We're afraid of other countries. So Israel is our little outpost, because they do mostly what the UK and the US want. And so it's called imperialism. And that's why I think it's there, and it's got nothing to do with religion. The leaders of Israel don't care that the Palestinian people worship a different God, although we're all descendants of the God of Abraham or something like that. It's not what it's about. And we're happy to let it happen. And the other thing too is, this is a whole other discussion. They are breeding scarcity and chaos. They want us to feel that the world is chaotic and unsafe. They want us to think that there's scarcity. And then you can get away with so much when you've got a population that traumatized and that fearful.
I have a question, Nick. I'm asking you this again, and maybe because both of you are on an international leftist coalition. Where were Israelis before they seized? Were they there and it just wasn't called Israel? It was called Palestine?
Yeah, it was Palestine. I can show you the map. This map shows.
So it was Palestine, and Israelis lived there, and they just said, "Fuck that, we're about to take this shit."
They were in Europe.
They also lived harmonious. They also lived harmonious with the Palestinians. The division, the colonial powers, of course, made the divisions like they did it everywhere. Like they did it in Asia, like they do it between the Sunnis and the Shias, between the Malaysians and the Chinese. They are so good at carving up societies and ethnic groups. It's amazing how the colonizer has done that.
Yeah, look at this. This map explains it all, because it also explains the strategy of Israel. So this is 1947, before the West started its project of creating this homeland of the Jews called Israel, right?
So Palestine originally was green, the green part. Okay.
Yes, look how much this is Palestine. And you had a bunch of Jewish settlements in there as well, right? And as far as I know, and I can learn more, but the story that I heard, that there was obviously conflicts that happens, but for the most part, it was way more peaceful than it was after the West got involved. Like, obviously, you had conflicts, but for the most part, they lived harmoniously, right? From the knowledge that I know, right? So then you can literally see the Zionist offensive that they was able to accomplish because of what? They got material support from the West. So then Naftali Bennett was like, bro, Benjamin Netanyahu, you pussy, why are we not just taking Gaza? Why don't we just take it? This is why Natalie Bennett was terrifying. And he's doing exactly that. We didn't talk about it more with Cream tomorrow. But you know it's why they bulldozing homes. They're trying to make it worse than this. Do you see the one on the far right?
They want them completely out then, because that's nothing more. They want them completely out then.
That's why it's
because that's barely anything.
CJ, that's why I call it a genocide. That's why I say that ethnic cleansing, because literally by all definitions, that is what it is. A part of a genocide is the displacement of people, not only just their deaths, right? And that is literally what Israel's trying to do. Now you know why I have like this super hardline position on Israel-Palestine. When I see Israel and Jamal Bowman be weak on this issue, that's unforgivable to me. Like one of them things I can't look past. Anyway, hopefully that kind of answers CJ, and it's one of those things where I can do it both ways. Remember we talked about we can do it.
Yeah, you can
do it both
answer
ways. Even if I set your premise, it doesn't justify the crimes against humanity that you guys have done. Where if you want to make the claims like, oh, this is Israeli land. Well, I can do it both ways. I can challenge you on historical premise, explaining how that's Palestinian land as well. So the idea, and that's why people who believe in a two-state solution are ignorant, because what right do you have to institute a two-state solution, right? CJ, imagine if black people in the United States were like, we don't like this country, we're gonna have our own fucking country, they call it Black America. You guys got to support a two-state solution so we can live in harmony, but we are our own country. They will look at us like, bro, what the fuck is wrong with you? That's just what they did. They have no right to claim another state because that's Palestinian land. The same people like Ukrainian sovereignty. You notice how they don't care about that when it comes to this issue. Mm-hmm. Once again, it's not that complicated. You just gotta look a little bit into history. That's all. If we see,
it's complicated if you want to complicate things.
Yeah,
though.
And they do that on purpose. Right. They were like, oh,
if
it's complicated. They want people to think they add a lot of bullshit. Zionists lie a lot too. There are also a lot of like blatant lies that you gotta like learn that it's not true. The media reports it as fact. But yeah, that's why that's something that we can't stop talking about. And we did dive in when we have Kareem. Asal Rod also joined us tomorrow as well, and she always has amazing takes on Israel-Palestine. We're gonna dive more into the offensive tomorrow, Kareem.
Nick, this person says Palestine was not an independent nation, though. You keep talking about history, but you also keep getting it wrong.
No, I mean it's literally a fact, though. I'll show you the previous map before. And now look at the offensive.
But do you know what he's even referring to? You know what Bill is referring to? As what part is he saying it wasn't an independent nation?
I gotta read the rest of his comments.
Okay.
He said British Palestine. I don't accept colonialism though. That's Palestinian land.
Right.
That is literally Palestinian land. That's what it is.
Genocide, not complicated.
I don't know what they. I literally don't know. I don't understand the argument. Right, because Palestinians are there.
I don't really care if it was an independent nation state, because
I don't understand.
Wait. Because a nation state was an invention by European colonial powers, and as such was used as a justification if some people had rights, or some groups of people had rights or not. But before that, all over the world, you didn't have nation states or independent nations. But tens of thousands of years, you already had areas or empires or geographical areas where people of a certain kind of culture were living. So you had Palestine, you had Mesopotamia, you had the Assyrians. Was Mesopotamia an independent nation state? No, of course not, because the nation state is maybe a few hundred years old. So I don't care if something was an official nation state or not. There is a part of the world where a certain group of people were living, and you cannot just kick them out and let a new group of people live there and give those people an official nation state and say they have a right to it because the previous people didn't have a nation state. No, the nation state was invented by the Europeans. So why does the rest of the world have to abide by those rules?
This is a great point, though, and it brings up the fact that we have to stop taking their framing. And that's what Bill is doing. Bill is a regular here. You're taking their framing. They're not who says that? Who is saying they're not? Like who?
Cares?
My man Bill
The nation state has been invented in Europe. Okay, what was it during the conference? I forgot the name. Oh man, I hate it. I teach the international
The
relations.
example I would give is like calling indigenous population here, calling them Indians. It would be the same sort of you get what I'm saying? It's the same sort of thing. Do we call the indigenous people here Indians because white people say they're Indians? You get what I'm saying? Or do we call them who they tell us who they are? It's the same sort of thing. Like, because a British white nation is saying they are powerful over this, that makes them not an independent state because white people are saying it.
Yeah, let me say this.
I don't take
let me
that.
say this because the comment directed at me. I talked to plenty of Palestinian activists. I haven't heard one motherfucker say I'm a British Palestinian. I never heard. That's why I'm literally. I was confused. I don't even understand the premise because my mind decolonized. Like I don't even accept that because when you listen to Palestinian activists who educated me on this issue, who these are the people I listen to, they say this is their land. If the Palestinians say that their land, I don't give a fuck what the empire says. Bill cares about what the empire says. He cares about the borders. I don't care. What made you think I would care about that? So I didn't see anything I said that was wrong.
No, but it's just
CJ
says such an important point. You are using the modern cultural lens of seeing things from the past, and that modern cultural lens comes from European culture. So we call it the Westphalian system, the Westphalian nation state system that comes from 1600 something, and then say, but these people don't have a right on their land, or these people didn't have an official land because they apparently were not part of that official European Westphalian nation state system. Okay, that was invented by Europeans. You can also say, but these people were not white, so they have no rights on this, on that. That's also a modern system. That's why you see these people who have discussions about whether Egyptians were black or brown or whatever. In those days, people just didn't care. It didn't exist, that kind of skin color hierarchical system that we have now. Okay, Egyptians were Egyptians in those days, and skin color was unrelated to the value or the position of people in the world as it is today. And it's the same where when you talk about Palestine or something, yeah, but it wasn't an official state before. Okay, but the idea of a nation state is a modern construct. Okay, that doesn't make sense.
Let me just say this, and I don't do this a lot, but Bill is a fucking idiot. I'm reading other shit that this fucking moron is saying. I'm gonna leave it there because I'm fucking pissed at this fucking piece of shit, Bill. Bill, you can go fuck the fuck off and not come back, sir. That's what you can do. So let's move on. Yeah, let me just get rid of this piece of shit right now.
I don't know what Bill said, but I just came back.
He can go. He's gone.
I agree with CJ.
Yeah, so like you refusing, you saying that like these colonialist framing is the framing we're gonna go with, even though we're telling you like this. It's just the idea that if white people say it, that's what it is. You get what I'm saying? And that's sort of like what it is. It's like, well, these white colonizers said this is what it is, so that's what it is. That it makes it like fact, and it's not. It's not.
You know, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I was saying Karl Marx said, to paraphrase, the ideas of the ruling class become the ruling ideas. And the ideas, we could say, of the dominant class become the dominant ideas. Everything we take for granted, our whole, Kareem used the word schema and schemata, like the way we organize, the way we see the world, is not natural. It's all a social construct that we create and that we continue to create. So history was created prior to us, but we continue to co-create this colonization mentality, and it does a couple of things. One is it excuses this happens with racism, and I'll give you an example. The idea is that The way things are the way they naturally are. And Kareem touched on this earlier. So an example is, you could look at a large company with a big accounting department that has no Black Americans working there. And somebody could say, well, that's just naturally the way it is. Black people don't want to be accountants simply because they're not there. We accept what is, we co-create the continuation of what is, and then we say it's the natural way it is. Well, you know how it is in Israel and Palestine. They've been fighting forever. They're always going to be fighting, and Israel has a right to exist. And it's just this acceptable, dominant narrative. But just because that's been the narrative throughout history, since Israel was formed in 1948, inflicted on that region in 1948, whereas the nations that existed there prior organically grew, right? People moved to different areas. As Kareem said, for the most part, people and Nick too were living in harmony at that point. That was organic. It happened evolutionarily, social evolution. And then we imposed Israel on it, and people think it already always existed. And we don't question the narrative of the way things are must be the way they are,
right?
Because that's the way they are, as opposed to, well, we're making a choice right now, right? And all borders are choices. We make the choice to perpetuate this colonization mentality. Joe Biden was caught on camera saying something interesting during the campaign, or right before the campaign, but it came out in the campaign, where he talked about European values, right? It wasn't really played up much, but it was this idea of, this is the way we are. And that idea that the other people must be then savages. And that idea of savage, and that word was created to justify slavery, to justify the colonization of North America and other parts of the world, all over the colonization of Africa. And colonization is very insidious. The other part of colonization that's horrible is, and Frantz Fanon talks about this, and he grew up in French colonialism, is the idea of that internal colonization, the belief, the self-limiting beliefs that oppressed people must create for themselves in order to survive. And a good example, showing my age here, but if you look back at 1970s television, there was a sitcom, All in the Family. And so here's Archie Bunker, the white, kind of, it was an odd thing. He was supposed to be like a likable racist, with potential to becoming a better person. But across the street were the Jeffersons, and the adult son of the Jeffersons, can't remember his name. He, whenever he spoke with Mr. Bunker, he used the inflections that Black people in Hollywood were expected to use in the 1920s and 30s. That subservient way of speaking. But he was a very intelligent person. And then when Archie Bunker's daughter and son-in-law came in the room, he just spoke with them regularly. And it was a good example of the understanding, a very frightening thing and terrifying thing, which is that in order to survive, white supremacists have made it necessary for oppressed people to stay in their place. And I think a good example is, look what just happened with Chris Smalls, who led the most consequential labor victory in our lifetimes. We haven't seen another victory like this in our lifetimes, with the unionizing the Amazon workers. Now, he went on Tucker Carlson, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why I think that would be a good idea. You reach as many people as you can with an idea of solidarity about workers. But that aside, all these white liberals got up in arms. And I tweeted this and I said, basically, you're telling a strong Black voice, know your place. And it is that colonization again where, hey, you stepped out of line. Remember, you're supposed to talk this way. You're supposed to act this way. You're not supposed to go over here. You're not supposed to talk to those people. It is the infantilization of oppressed people, and in this case of Black Americans, thinking they don't have the ability to decide for themselves who they talk to, when they talk, and what they say, that a white liberal has to come in and say, hold on there. You know, you're not capable of making that decision. And we have been doing that, and we continue to do that through colonization, now psychological colonization, not just physical, for generations, and we're doing it today. And so we erase the Black radical in this country. The term Bernie bro is meant to denote that there are white liberal, progressives that like Bernie, and they're just a little petulant, and if only they'd come around. While the liberals who use that term completely erase Black radicals. And erasing the Black radical voice is something that the colonizers have been doing. Well, look what happened with COINTELPRO in the 1970s, where the FBI, they murdered Fred Hampton. They silence Black radical voices. And that is an extension of colonialism, so that Colin Kaepernick still doesn't have a job, right? I've watched some of the football teams this year. I won't hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah, they could use. There's plenty of teams that could use him.
Christ. Listen, there's not a lot of people that could be a quarterback. Like, it's not a thing. There's a ton of like people that could play third base in baseball, but there's not a lot of people that could be a quarterback and be effective at it. And so, but what he did was he stepped out of line. He broke the rule. You know, you're supposed to know your place. You're supposed to be grateful that you can play this game and make a lot of money. We're letting you do this. And it's that parentification of the white class where we feel we have the right to tell you when you can speak and when you can't. Google, which owns YouTube, right? YouTube is doing that to you. You're suppressed right now. They're telling you what you can and can't say and where you can and can't say it. Twitter's doing the same thing. So, you know, the colonization it seeps into so many different things. And it's not just physical, it's emotional and social. Did any of that make sense? I don't know.
All of it made sense. Nick, did you want to?
I'll pass it to Kareem. I think you want to chime in.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense what you say, Anthony, and also the people in power decide what you can feel, what you feel, and what you don't feel. The pain that you feel, or the fact that one feels oppressed is simply denied. That is pulling the race card, and it's so incredibly frustrating how you have a system where just the majority of the people around the world are just denied their humanity and what they can feel and what is happening to them, you know, and that of course ties into capitalism. The only reason why one group of people can impose their own will onto other groups of people is because they hoarded the most wealth, and with the most wealth you have the most power. It's as simple as that. And I like what Anthony said, that you live in a kind of, you live almost, how can I say that? You live as a puppet with a puppet master, okay, that tells you what to feel, that tells you how to behave. And it reminds me of something I read or heard a long time ago, and I just found it. Some people can look for it. There was this graduate student in the beginning of the 20th century, I think, whose name was Brent Staples, Brent, and then Staples, Chicago University, who was a black man, and who realized that every time he was walking down during the evening in the park or on the streets, people were becoming uncomfortable, especially women, who would think that he would attack them or rape them. And what he found out was that he had a smart thing. He would whistle. Oh, sorry guys, there's the doorbell. I'll be right back. You guys go on.
Well said. Well said. So I think we're gonna wrap up here very soon. Because I have more stuff I want to cover, but we don't got enough time for a segment. So we're doing International Leftist Coalition tomorrow, and I got a few things I want to cover because anything else it will take too long to cover. So I effectively had nothing else less you do, CJ.
I don't, but let's give Anthony. We'll go around.
Quickly,
so go ahead.
My,
Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
I get the delivery, so I have to go. But Brent Staples, and what he did was he would whistle Mozart, something like that, Mozart in the evening, and people would feel less uncomfortable because they would think that he was at least a more cultured black man. You know what I mean? So in other words, you are pushed to behave in a way, just what Anthony said, to don't look threatening, to talk in a white way, and all these kind of things. So people are denied the natural self. That's what I wanted to say. I'll leave it at here. Great conversation, guys. And
all right, Dr. Kareem, thank you for joining us. And then let's give Anthony an opportunity to, if you have any last words, but if you don't, if you have any appearances, what do you have going on? Go ahead.
I hope they're not last words, but some
not like that.
thoughts.
Yes.
I would say, I think it was Marshall McLuhan, the media philosopher, who said, I believe, the last thing a goldfish notices about its environment is the fact that it's in water. It doesn't know. Our environments, and this is continuing what I was saying before, our social environment becomes so common to us that we don't question its naturalness, its origin, or the fact that we created it and continue to create it. So when we see fighting in the Middle East, when we see racial strife here, when we see poverty, even caring, compassionate people shake their heads and say, well, I guess this is just the way it is. Without understanding, I believe, there are puppet masters. Now, when you break it down, the question that always comes to mind for me is, when we look at the fact that there's a housing crisis, homelessness, when there is racism in policing and the court system. Can I say one thing about policing? And this doesn't let people off the hook who are police and who break the law. But police are enforcing the policy that the society through the government wants them to enforce. These are not aberrations when these things happen. This is what, when I see these things, the violence against the Black community, this is what the society wants. Because they fund the police and they give them the power to do these things. And they never take that power away. But the belief that this is just the way it is allows everything to continue the way it's continuing. I have been ending any podcast, appearance I've had lately with a message of hope, and that is this. I believe what we're seeing are the actions of a desperate elite. I believe they're terrified. I think they're not stupid. I think they know exactly that their game is up, and more people are onto them. I'm sensing a shift in consciousness in people that I never saw before. I see it on social media, but I hear it in the conversations that I have with folks from all walks of life politically, that the system is rotten and doesn't work, and the recognition of the fact that we don't have to be the goldfish and think the water is just this thing that's here that we don't see. We literally create the reality that we live in with the way we think and feel and act and behave and what we accept and don't accept. So the final piece of that is we don't have to accept this, and we're not. And I actually believe we're winning. And the way I know we're winning is they keep trying to convince us we're not. See, if we really were not a threat, we wouldn't matter. They wouldn't have to silence you on YouTube or suppress you on Twitter. They're frightened and they're terrified because they know their time is running out. And the world that we create is not going to resemble at all the world that we're living in now. You know, there's going to be a time now people look back, and I'll just end with this piece. I see it's getting late. Where people look back at slavery and they say, well, gosh, how horrible was that? We will never allow that again. That's terrible. How could human beings think they could have owned other human beings? Well, I'm hoping that not too long in the future, someone's going to look back and say, how could you have lived in a society where you allowed people to sleep on sidewalks and under bridges? That's crazy that you did that. Wow, glad we don't live in those times, right? We literally can create that world. And more people are not buying the line of bullshit that either party is giving us, especially the Democrats, who pretend to care about these things and say, oh, what can we do? And I think then that's the shift that happens, that great awakening that happens, where we start to realize the working class, regardless of what our backgrounds are, how much money we do or don't have, how secure our jobs are or there aren't, what color we are, all of those things, what our history is, where we start to realize we actually have all the power we need to transform the system. And if we didn't, they would just ignore us. Why would they need to police us to death? And not us, I'm white, right? But why would they need to police people to death? Why do they react to protests the way they do? Why were they so afraid? You know, when protests pop up. And that's because I remember when the precinct was burned down, was that Minneapolis? And more than 50% of Americans agreed with it. And if you don't think that sent ripples of shockwaves through the ruling elite, they were fucking petrified. Because if people could do it to a police precinct, they could do it to a governor's mansion. And if you look at the history of the United States, they did that. I don't advocate that or violence, but I recognize the power that exists when even moderate people say, well, that seems kind of reasonable to me. They've already lost, the elite. We have to start. And the one last thing is, when I say these messages of hope on Twitter, I got a lot of people who say, like, what fantasy land are you living in? And the reality is, I know we have to start recognizing our power. The rich only exist with their wealth because we allow it. The government only exists because we allow, in its current form, because we allow it. And, you know, there's 99% of us. It's a lot of people. And I'd love to continue that part of the conversation, because that's, I think, how we defeat capitalism, how we defeat patriarchy, how we defeat racism, how we defeat environmental destruction, is exactly the way that, you know, that I'm saying, which is just recognizing we don't have to have this. We could decide something else and just make it so.
Well said, Zinkus. So I want to read the one last thing I'm gonna say, and then we can I'll give CJ the final thought of the day. I want to read a comment from my good friend / co-host. You guys know Zoya co-founded 10 Demands with me. So I'm gonna read her comment. I love her perspective on these things. America caused Soviet collapse, and I will never forgive them. People here don't know the potential in their minds and heart. You can take this entire system down. We got the numbers. RBN is going to wake people up. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to show people other alternatives way to think. I really want to change the United States left in the way they think and their strategy. So we can only start one show at a time. So tomorrow I will have the International Leftist Coalition. I've been on this time slot Monday through Thursday. I'm planning a Saturday show with a few guests as well. But make sure you got to check out the Anti-Imperialist Summit next weekend. We got so many great guests like Dr. Gerald Horn, Vijay Prashad, if I'm saying that correct. We got Jimmy Dore. He's going to be on there on Saturday as well. A lot of great professors and activists. So that last thing I want to plug, make sure you guys support our Substack and Patreon as well. CJ, I'll give you last thoughts. I'll pass it back to you, brother.
Yes, so another great conversation. I know we kind of went off on some tangents, but I've grown to just accept that's what it's gonna be, just to let the conversation kind of flow. So on I want to do what I've been doing lately, and that's to leave you with a historical video. So I'm gonna share this video now. We're gonna end the stream after the video. We're not coming back after the video. So thank you for watching on Twitter, on Rockfin. We're gonna be on Rumble soon. We're gonna be on Odyssey soon. Thank you for watching on Twitter, on Facebook. We're trying to diversify. So I'm gonna leave you with this. It's about the police state and exactly what we've been talking about today. And like I said, we're going to be leaving or ending the stream right after. We're not coming back after the video. So everybody have a good rest of your night. And here is a little Malcolm X to end the show with.
Once the police have convinced the white public that the so-called Negro community is a criminal element, they can go in and question, brutalize, murder unarmed, innocent Negroes, and the white public is gullible enough to back them up. This makes the Negro community a police state. This makes the Negro neighborhood a police state. It's the most heavily patrolled. It has more police in it than any other neighborhood, yet it has more crime in it than any other neighborhood. How can you have more cops and more crime? Why? It shows you that the cops must be in cahoots with the criminals. Once the police